Hey gang, welcome to the first entry in our yearly Warframe tier list. I've been doing YouTube for about 9 months now, and it's just been the most exciting, fun thing ever. Thank you guys for the support. I am genuinely blessed. Thank you for the opportunity to have me make these videos for you. This is your channel. I just run it. That's really all there is to it. I make what you want. So yeah, this is pretty exciting. This is gonna be the first entry, and because it's the first entry, I find it kind of important to create a set of consistently applicable standards and criteria that I can apply indefinitely. Hopefully this game never dies. Really hope it doesn't. And if you don't really care to hear about it, you can skip to the entries directly using timestamps. I'm also going to be including a lot of my favorite setups, with especially the frames that I play a lot more of. Just know that a lot of thought and studying goes into these videos, and if you're going to comment and, you know, be constructive first of all, and just come back here if you didn't watch the criteria and standards, just don't make a bum out of yourself, please. Here is the big government mandated disclaimer. There is no such thing as a bad Warframe, but some frames are just better than others. I do not, well actually I do make the rules in this case, but just please listen to my grading methods before you comment. Please, 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 please. Firstly, I'm only using 3 tiers. These tiers are based on the frame's ability to perform DE's higher level intended content, meaning moderate duration, Steel Path, Void Cascade, Survival, Defense, along with EDA and ETA. Both more beginner-friendly and level cap concepts will be covered and applied here, but not so much integrated into the grading itself. The reason for using 3 tiers is Warframe is just in a pretty tight-knit spot in terms of balance, and I think if you're using more than 3 tiers, again, this is personal opinion, if you're using more than 3 tiers, I really think you're stretching it. You're either, maybe if you want to do some rage bait, that's acceptable, that's part of the game, no judgment here, but also there's just not as much difference between the frames as I think a full like 5 to 6 tier list would let on. So S indicates a perfect frame with maybe 1 to 2 minor flaws. A indicates a strong frame, generally with a large central flaw or a bunch of smaller ones. And then B indicates a strong frame, but has too many things holding it back, whether external, internal, large, or small. External would be like the case of the game not promoting their playstyle or whatever, and internal being like actual inner kit problems. Additionally, 50% of the grade is given based on the frame's strength in a meta sense, with all external synergies kept in mind. This makes up the majority of the ranking per frame, obviously. 30% of the grade is given based on the frame's design more in isolation to ensure the frame achieves its outcomes through its own merit. Not the Helmand system, not just the Kuva Sobek, whatever, so on and so forth. And then 20% of the grade is given, basically it's my kind of margin of error for personal bias. Some frames I just think are better than others, cooler than others, stronger than others, based on the way I play the game, my favorite game modes, so on and so forth. Additionally, this list makes 2 assumptions, which are A, an average level of investment, and B, an average level of mastery. Investment refers to things like mods, augments, arcanes, weapon synergies, etc., etc. Mastery refers to your ability to execute the frame's gameplay loop properly, so basically everything else. For example, MESA is a frame without much required mastery to achieve her S tier outcomes, but her investment ceiling is incredibly high. Limbo is a frame with much needed mastery, but doesn't need much in terms of investment to achieve S tier outcomes. I'm choosing to use averages not only because that's statistically where most players will be, but if there are newer players or even like mid-game players wanting to try new frames and are using this video as a vehicle to do so, averages act as a good baseline to what they can expect from a frame nearly right out the box. So let's begin. We're going to be moving in reverse alphabetical order because I'm different and quirky. Everyone else has alphabetical, so I figured I'd switch it up a little bit, and it means I get to get one of my least favorite frames out of the way right away. Let's begin. Like, sub, thank you for the hypes, likes, all that stuff. Thank you. God bless it. I am truly so grateful. Thank you. Let's begin. Yeah, I really do not enjoy playing ZEPHYR. Just her tailwind dash is nice, but can lead to some concrete wall eating without any of the same charm that like Titania and Gauss have. Airburst is really great grouping, but the ragdoll can be a little bit annoying, and other frames just kind of do the whole grouping thing better. God, I wish the ephemera, it really bothers me, this little bug here where like the ephemera still shows. Ugh, anyway, okay. So Turbulence is obviously like amazing survivability, but again, like, if you get a bunch of range going, you can like protect things that aren't yourself, which I think is really cool. And then there's Tornadoes. Tornadoes are where I'd say the mastery and investment really get to shine, and where this frame gets absolutely ridiculous. I consider ZEPHYR to be kind of boring, clunky, unfun, but if there's one thing this frame isn't, it's weak. I consider ZEPHYR to be one of the best frames in the game, especially with higher levels of understanding with the mechanics of tornadoes, both like in terms of the code and how they move and stuff like that, and how they absorb elements, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot to understand about tornadoes. More than I think should be required for an ability as simple as tornadoes, but whatever, that's beside the point. Augments give her a variety of playstyles and builds. Even with like a basic beginner mod setup, you get really strong outcomes. She's acquirable through the dojo, so even with a mediocre loadout for a new player, like, it's just insane. If you want to like master ZEPHYR ZEPHYR, this really isn't the channel for you, but I've seen enough enemies perish by her hand from the ZEPHYR mains to like know how good this frame is, and I've played her again extensively enough myself, because I kind of have a weird thing where like I try to play things I really don't like to learn. I've tried to mimic the masters, and I've gotten some pretty good outcomes. I've tried the Tempest Barrage setup, which I think is really fun. Roar, Breach Surge, Kuvasobek, all sorts of fun stuff. Adaria Prime, as you guys can see here. This whole setup is really enjoyable, and again, I've put in the time. You can play ZEPHYR from MR0 to LR5 without a complaint, especially if you enjoy your kit. But for me, ooh, it's just not a good time. But this kit is very complete. It is very strong. I don't like her fashion frame. I have to complain every 2 seconds. This frame is very good. I recommend picking her up, seeing if you like her. If you don't, you put her right back down. She's a pretty low investment frame to acquire and build. But if you will like her, I think you'll play her for the rest of your life. This frame is absolutely bonkers. Getting popped in S tier without much question. I've seen a variety of players call YARELI bad, and this just isn't really the case as far as I can observe. Boring? Yeah, I think so, for sure. Limited in playstyles? In a way, yeah, kind of, I'd say so. But even with her really strong, like, limited options, they're pretty strong. I think a lot of players are easily frustrated by the limited nature of this frame and mistake it for her being bad. And like some players use a frame's ability to utilize multiple playstyles, like SARYN for example, or WISP for example, to categorize strength. And that logic would imply that YARELI is weak technically. But that's not really how I grade all of my stuff. If you put a good secondary with a decent build on her, you can get really insane results. The damage vulnerability from C snares and loyal marina snares are really great. Aqua Blades is kind of a dud, whatever. Her passive's great. And the grouping's like pretty it's good. It's good, I'd say. My biggest qualm with YARELI is Marlena, and it's something that really is YARELI's fault. It's not that I don't like Marlena. I actually enjoy K-Drives. I think they're really fun in the right setting. Which is why it's so frustrating to me that you can't choose between something like Sentry Marlena with Loyal, and then riding her around, right? It should really be tap hold cast, in my opinion, and it's not even close. Even if that would require an augment, I'm not even against that at all. I would be fine with that if I could switch between the two, because there's some tile sets where I really enjoy Marlena, I can get the most out of her. But there's an equal amount of tile sets where I'd much rather blow my shit smooth off than even like touch my 2-key without the augment. It really bothers me. Like sometimes rooms within even like the same tile set want different outcomes from Marlena. So like I get you can swap builds technically, but like I want to be able to choose between the two. I think especially like if I'm playing like a game mode where okay, like I'm at the objective now, I could put my Sentry Marlena down, and then oh, it's time to move mobile defense targets, time to move alchemy targets. Okay, hop on Marlena, let's go. The fact that it's not tap hold is, in my opinion, just really ridiculous. Breach Surge fits this like frames aesthetic really well. The gun buffing stuff is totally an option. Thermal Sunder, Shock, Smite, whatever. There's a lot of choices you get here because Aqua Blades, in my view, is kind of a dud, especially for average investment. But this frame is fine. She's fine to play. But I will say, if you don't like her playstyle, the frame actually, in my view, does nothing for you. So she's going to be going in B for me. I think she's totally acceptable, and you can get really great S tier outcomes, but you will probably want some higher investment stuff. And even then, if you don't like what she does, again, I think her strengths are very niche. They're strong, but they're niche, and some frames can even achieve it a little bit better, in my opinion. So, sorry, YARELI players, please no pipe bombs. Please. Just, I want to live a little bit longer. But yeah, B tier for me, which means she's good, but she's got a lot of things holding her back, in my opinion, including that niche playstyle, along with, again, frames do what she does just as good, if not better, while not being limited to that playstyle. XAKU is an absolutely killer frame. Most players know how good they are, but their skill floor is a little bit higher than most frames, both in like mechanical execution and like understanding how their kit is supposed to work. I don't think it's always the most intuitive. There's a lot of confusion present when newer players get their hands on this bony bastard. But when you get the basic wheels turning on XAKU, they perform incredibly well. You get passive dodge chance, which is amped in the vast on time, which is a little bit weird in terms of survivability. Most frames don't really have that kind of mechanic. Usually they have straight DR or invulnerability or invisibility, whatever. XAKU's dodge chance is very unique to them. You can easily fill the 25% gap in their survivability with things like Omomori, Condemn, Rolling Guard, Arcane Aegis, all sorts of stuff. And Zada's Whisper also kind of helps with survivability thanks to those bullet attractor bubbles, which are pretty good. Additionally, Zada's Whisper is an amazing ability. It can do very chill things in its base, whatever it does, but once you really understand it, mastery over Zada's Whisper, especially on frames besides ZAKU sometimes. It could do a whole lot. Grasp of Loke is the opposite of Zada's. That ability is straight fundamentals. You take the enemy's guns and you shoot back, dealing really insane damage, scaling with enemy level, which is really, really, really useful, and very rarely seen in Warframe at that. The Lost contains 3 abilities, and unfortunately only one of them is really solid. You can combine, you can combine them a little bit and make something work, but in my view, Gaze is the most useful one, and and people really pretend that Gaze can't be used in the same way that Terrify can, which I think is really silly. It's nowhere near as efficient, but like Gaze does not have to sit planted. You can put it down, strip the armor, and then re-gaze new targets. It's really not that deep, in my opinion. I don't know why people pretend like the Gaze it's fine to use on the fly, in my opinion, and I've played a decent bit of ZAKU. And the Vast on Time is kind of the engine that keeps ZAKU running, keeps their gameplay loop feeling really smooth, pausing all your native durations, meaning like high quality of life, effortless energy economy, and honestly, the thing that keeps ZAKU for me between A and S is the box breaking they have. It is absolutely insane. I played a ton of ZAKU because of Descendia, for that treasure room, floor 19, and also I use them for my box breaking, which is really nice on the calendar. ZAKU is just really easy to pilot once you understand them at a even slightly above average level. Not much investments required, but if you decide to, you can. Their ceiling is pretty decent. And yeah, I think ZAKU is just really, really easy to play. It's disgusting. There's a lot of setups you can use, obviously like Sobek Acid Shells, you can use Harrow's Condemned, you can use Breach Surge. My favorite build in the game, one that I don't really see anyone else use, and maybe that's because it's not that good, but I personally enjoy, is Shooting Gallery ZAKU, blinding the whole map with 34 meters of range consistently for 10 seconds at a time. Pretty fun build. I really like ZAKU a lot, and I strongly recommend you play them. They're a little bit of a hassle to farm, so maybe stick with the Prime, but you will need Zada's Whisper at some point anyways. But yeah, this frame is going to make a comfy little spot in S tier. I do believe they are incredibly strong. Wukong is a frame held back by 2 main things. Iron Staff, it's the stance that comes with it, honestly feels a bit like Purposeful Torment. It's just not fun to use at all for me. I've gotten quite used to it, and even then, it just doesn't feel as good as the spammy nature of Exalted Blade, or Baruch's Serene Storm, or Valkyr's Hysteria. It just does not feel that great to use. And Defy is just not that great of an ability. Now, granted, you get a Helmet slot in exchange of that, but still not great. And then the passive, which it's nice to have those extra lives. I won't pretend that I've popped it a few times, but it's like, what if I had like a better passive? Would I still die? That question we ask ourselves with a lot of on-death passives. Wukong still does the Blast Influence Classic with Iron Staff, a ton of range, gets a lot done. The clone is pretty solid. I do wish there was a little more to it, like what I would give to have myself have Iron Staff and my clone out priming with the Proboscis Cernos. I would kill for that. Cloudwalker is very, very strong movement, utility, and survivability. Very, very strong, especially in the movement tier. Like, being able to reposition that effectively, either for combat or for objectives, is just really, really, really strong. Wukong is straight melee fundamentals. I think he's reasonably fun to play. I think certain players that are less like me will enjoy him more than me. I will say that. I think, for me, Wukong's just not really my playstyle as much. I play him often enough, but not so much that I can say he's one of my favorite frames. He's just not. Yeah, he's good. I don't play, Roar Nourish, Wrathful Advanced, the classics. Like, he can do a lot. And honestly, even I've used a Defy build to counter one-shot enemies, and that's pretty fun. But in that case, it's just kind of a slow build and not as fun. Wukong is very basic, but he's also, look at this fashion frame. Like, come on, dude. For real. Yeah, this frame's good. And I've used infested mobility setups with Cloudwalker to be as fast as possible. This frame's definitely fun, but I think a lot of the fact that he's just not really for me, and I think that melee, his niche, has some insane competition. So for me, Wukong ends up in the B tier. Yeah, WISP is one of the best supports and frames in the game, both in terms of design, not that design, and output. This frame is just killer. Like, absolutely killer. You get so much value through, whether it's survivability, whether it's like invisibility, you get damage even, without much effort from WISP. And the thing is, even if you put that effort forward, you are actually rewarded for it. There's a lot of frames that they provide a lot, but they don't have much of a ceiling. Their floor is good, but their ceiling's not very high. WISP actually has an incredible incredible ceiling to her, which I think is really enjoyable. You get a ton of mobility, which is great, 2 instantaneous teleports, one which makes her invincible and invisible, one that gives her crit stats, and they all expand Breach Surge to insane amounts, even if you don't build that much range. Breach Surge is like a ridiculous ability, and obviously other frames use it very frequently, but for her, she gets synergies that allow that kind of skill expression to come through, which I think is really, really enjoyable. Soulgate kind of stinks, but you know, you get a precision intensify slot that way, and we bring it up here. Where are you? Yeah, you can use Cataclysmic Gate, which in my view is actually a really, really fun to use and quite strong augment, but it does require the higher ends of investment, in my opinion. So in terms of Wisp, again, I'm not the Wisp master. There's already like 1 or 2 or 3 of those on this YouTube platform that we use, so you should consult them for the real stuff. But in terms of setup, Wisp is kind of the queen of snapshotting buffs. You know, like with Grimoire, with Molt Vigor, with Matter Eye, stuff like that, and just stacking like endless power strength. So Roar becomes like an obvious pickup, though there's a ton of other options. There's like an Hour Plus God on Wisp by Moog, I believe it is. So if you want true Wisp mastery, I suggest you go there. But if you see Wisp and you like what you see, in whatever way that might be, I really think you should pick her up. I think this frame is incredibly strong. Support, damage, literally everything you could want. Probably one of the best supports in the game. It's really not all that close. So with that being said, Wisp makes it up into our S tier without much contest. Also, just in case you weren't aware, I'm not doing inner tier list like rankings. So ZEPHYR is not better than Wisp, so on and so forth. In my view, VORUNA sits in a case kind of similar to Wukong. They sit both in the melee niche, but I would say that VORUNA is a lot more, if beyond like all the frames that are tied to melee, I'd say VALKYR and VORUNA are the 2 that are most tied to it. But God, VORUNA does a really good job. She executes more like an assassin than a berserker. It has some really cool interactive stuff going on, with her augment especially. But ultimately, she does kind of end up just as like another melee frame, which isn't a bad thing, for example, but she's more tied to her niche than the rest. The passives she gets to choose from are really great, in my opinion, especially the status immunity and parkour velocity. Those are the ones I find myself using the most often, depending on whether I'm in combat or not, and I like that level of interactivity with a kit like that. Shroud / Prey of Dinar, Fangs of Rock, just the stupidest combo in the game. Like, it's, oh god, my fashion frame is really good. Anyway, really insane combo. It's just kind of a bread and butter, and then Lightgath's Hunt is really great. Obviously, I wish she could do the all fours thing. Trust me, every VORUNA player does. But ultimately, like, getting Wrathful Advance is something I would probably take anyway on a melee frame like this. So I feel like Roar is also really good. This frame, in my view, is kind of limited, but like when she's operating within her niche, it's absolutely insane. But because of her niche nature, and she can't do much else. Like, she's very strong with melee, but that's about it. But again, that competition, that niche is a very fought for, contested area. So with that being said, I'm gonna pop VORUNA in B, but she's definitely really good. I would say you probably want a little bit higher investment as well. Maybe if this was a high investment tier list. Granted, if this was a high investment tier list, it'd probably look pretty similar because a lot of these frames go up a good bit with investment. But VORUNA, I can pop in B tier pretty comfortably. Please don't yell at me. Yeah, Volt is one of the best frames in the game. I would say, just, he's interesting. He for me, he's between A and S. He really doesn't excel at many things in particular, like in the same way that VORUNA might. You give VORUNA a task, she's asking what kind of content, what loadout, status cap, stuff like that. You ask Volt to jump, he just asks how high. This frame definitely has problems. His passive kind of stinks. Discharge has an outdated mechanic that doesn't really make it proc electric. There's like other things going on with him. You need Shock Trooper. But my god, like Shock Trooper speed, electric shield with Roar just really takes you wherever you need to go in Warframe. Good shield gating setup, good shield tanking setup, clearing at low levels with discharge. Like, he kind of just does everything you need him to. It's very much a straight fundamentals frame. I would love for Volt to get additional love, but the truth is he just doesn't need it as much as other frames do. He can pick up most weapons, especially very strong with melee. The fact that he can force influence in his base kit is just really strong. Obviously, you know, influence merchant to a degree, but what are you gonna do? Someone could easily make the case that Volt doesn't belong in S, and I think that they could make that case very soundly. But to me, this frame is literally just never a bad choice. So versatile, exciting to play, scales well with investment while also having a pretty decent floor, and can use such a broad array of tools and bring a ton of value to the team as well, because of capacitance giving shields, electric shield being pick upable with the augment, and also just being able to sit behind it is nice. Very high power strength frame, so roar uses is really good. Speed, even though no one likes the speed, backflip out of it, stop, whatever, I get it. The speed could be a little bit annoying, and shock trooper, being able to force that for your whole team for a very long duration because its base duration is so strong. It's just really good. It's really good. I like the desiccation cat setup. I think I have it here. This is my personal one. It's not that great, but yeah, desiccation cat setup is super fun. I strongly recommend that. Yeah, this frame can pick up just any weapon and make no issue out of any content. He's incredibly strong. And maybe if Warframe was a more strict game with a stricter meta and needed stronger niches, Volt would not be as strong as he is. But because Volt is so good at everything, while not being great at anything, he really just does belong in S tier, if you ask me. VAUBAN is in a rough spot in my opinion, and I say this a lot because I love VAUBAN. He was one of my first like real mains. He just feels really bad to play in my opinion. I've tried Nourish, I've tried Tempest Barrage, Pillage, and those setups work just fine. Tesla Bank is actually a pretty fine augment, I would say. If it worked a little more consistently, that'd be great. Full Shed and Overdrive are pretty acceptable abilities, but that's also half of Mind Layer working. You don't really want half of your kit to work, you want the whole thing to work. And Photon Strike is capable of damage, but generally I use it as a Helminth slot. The investment and effort you have to put together for him, and like the speed at which you can execute his kit, it's just not really there. Bastille functions pretty well, but there's better armor strips, although it's not bad, and giving that armor is really valuable, especially in the age of a lot of armor synergies we have going on. It's actually kind of nice. It's a very accessible 1000 armor, and it lasts longer than Bastille does. It lasts after Bastille goes down, so it's not too bad. Vortex pisses me off. I don't like Vortex a lot, and it really bothers me. Obviously, it depends on the terrain you're kind of operating in an open field. It can work totally fine, but if you introduce almost any obstacle, and just VAUBAN and Vortex start geeking out, it's very frustrating. I've used Atomocycles to prop open doors, man. I'm desperate. I'm frustrated. On paper, VAUBAN actually seems fine. But in terms of execution, this frame is just not fun to play in most settings. Even though this VAUBAN is like, and Protea, like those are my play styles, I just don't find it fun. The most successful, like he's got like a target cap on Bastille, like it shreds armor at the speed of like molasses, a snail. It's so bad. I really, this frame bothers me because his potential's there. Pillage is the setup I found the most useful because you don't need a full strip on it, because Bastille is already shredding some defense. So with multiple Bastilles and Pillage, you can very easily, more snappily shred that armor and also give yourself shields back and use Arcane Aegis to survive. Enemy caps on abilities in the big 25, about to be 26. Absolutely ridiculous. VAUBAN needs his other 2 orbs to be useful. Not really sure where else to go from there. His failings are just not always his own either. Warframe has become a pretty fast-paced game, and VAUBAN's just a bit slow. I really do think that some changes to Mind Layer... Oh, whoops. Some changes to Mind Layer would be really beneficial. I think that Overdriver and Flechette are fine, but Tether Coil and Vector Pad doing more. Vector Pad just giving a speed increase when you walk over it, like the way Volt speed works, would just do the trick. And then Tether Coil, I'm not really sure what to do with that. I think giving VAUBAN's Tether Coil some kind of like anti-overguard built-in ability would be really sick. This frame needs help. He can be executed really well, especially with higher investment, like myself, but he just does not feel that great to play, in my opinion, and with that being said, he's definitely heading right to B tier. VALKYR got the most insane glow-up ever, and this melee frame is probably in, like, melee frame GOAT contention now. There is just so much to like here. The passive is incredibly intuitive and easy to use, while having a lot to it. Just more damage, don't die. I don't know what else VALKYR could want, to be honest with you. Ripline has been made into such a fun ability to use. The grouping on it is amazing. The mobility on it is amazing. It's just fun to use. Warcry is just a bunch of attack speed, which attack speed kind of like dampens certain ability or certain weapons. So like obviously like getting damage through Wrathful Advance or Roar or Nourish is fun, but Warcry kind of gives damage in a different way. Boosting armor as well, being really good for a lot of the armor synergies that are coming out recently with Old Peace. Paralysis is often removed because it's, first of all, it's kind of inconvenient to cast repeatedly. There's going to be a couple abilities I talk about, like Temple's Overdrive, where like debuffing enemies is just not as good as buffing yourself innately. Having to spam cast is pretty annoying. I understand it's just pressing buttons, but that's a lot of button presses. Also, the damage on Paralysis just isn't needed for VALKYR at all. So there you go. She's doing too much damage already, so it's best to pivot to other parts of her kit. Nourish and Roar are great for that. Wrathful Advance, totally an option, although that is more damage. I use Nourish because the energy econ is just nice. Some game modes I don't get as much energy as I'd like to. And Hysteria is just nuts. You shouldn't really die in this frame ever. You get so much damage. It's just a fun melee playstyle. I remember because we got the free Valkyr Primes, a bunch of players got it, and a bunch of players got to understand what true strength feels like, especially in the melee setup, which melee is disproportionately stronger early game. So it's really good. Valkyr is easy to pick up, play with 0 brain cells firing. I've actually got a guide on Valkyr on this channel. Feel free to check that out. It's pretty up to date, I would say. And yeah, this frame is really good, but really simple at the same time, which a lot of people will obviously enjoy. So yeah, let's move. I got another fashion frame, I guess, to show off real quick. One of my favorites, and I think, yeah, this one's pretty ass. But these two I think are fairly good. Anyway, with that, Valkyr goes in my S tier. A tier is looking empty, but we're going to fill that up pretty quick here. Uriel is the latest Warframe added to the game, and he is emblematic of an absolute increase in quality of frame design, and something I am really, really, really excited for. His kit is incredibly cohesive and plays very smoothly. The demons are really, like, nice pieces of utility. Cottonock, what's his name, right? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, he's the one who chains the enemies together. He works pretty well. I like him a lot. The slow is nice, but the chain damage is kind of what you're looking for there. And Infernalis is just such a fun ability. I love the movement. I love it so much. You have no idea. Remedium just keeps Uriel from dying all the time, basically, which is incredibly, incredibly good. And Golfagor, or Golfagoat, as I call him, fixes your energy economy basically instantly, which I always enjoy, being able to run Blind Rage without much thought. So that's nice. And then, what is it? Oh, I'm not going to pronounce that. Vithalas, whatever. Yeah, he is nice. I like him a lot. However, I think they need to... I'm annoyed by the sigils, personally. Gathering them can be really inconvenient, especially with only, there only being 3 on the map at the same time. And the base duration for the buff feels, honestly, uncharacteristically low. So yeah, 1, Infernalis, great movement, some decent damage for you and your demons, because it sets the demons on fire as well. Remedium just keeps you and your demons alive. The gameplay loop between 2 and 3 is really, really intuitive, and charging Brimstone, the Brimstone, by the way, feels amazing. Just a domain expansion ult, feels so sick. It just wrecks a pretty large amount of space. You can set up your build how you kind of want to. I've noticed most of the Uriel builds kind of pilot the same, but there are key differences. Like I've seen the 2 I've seen and the 3 I've played. I've played vanilla Uriel, and I've played Gaz TTV has a Thermal Sunder setup, which is pretty good with Sobek, that took out Brimstone. And then I played another build by Salt Prime, which uses Bright Bonnet from NOKKO. One is more of a caster, one's more of a weapons platform. I will say I personally just prefer vanilla Uriel the most, but this frame is just amazing. Unfortunately, he is a bit one note. He can't die and deals a bunch of damage. Doesn't provide much to his team, which is fine. But I really think that DE should look more into investigate more into the space that Brimstone and Gauss's battery. They create such an ultimate you have to kind of charge up and micromanage is such an exciting concept, and getting to pay off for that is really, really fun. So for me, the consistency or inconsistency of Demonium really bothers me. Of Vithalas, whatever the fuck his name is, pissed me off. I really don't like collecting those sigils for such a low base. Having to do something so active, which that could be skill issue. You can call me a lazy Warframe player, that's fine. Having to manually collect those sigils, which I understand the charges Brimstone too, but the low buff duration on that is just a little bit annoying. I think it should be 15 seconds base personally, but whatever, or 12 seconds even, I don't really care. Obviously my build is not super high duration, but still usually the primed cont will fix up your buffs, and in this case it doesn't, which is super annoying. But this frame is just very raw power. But to me, he does fall a little short of S tier. I'd say A tier is completely acceptable. If he brought a little bit more to the team, I think that'd be fine. But just doing raw damage and never dying, that puts you in a pretty solid spot, I'd say. But a lot of frames do that. He just does it the coolest way, in my view. So yeah, A tier for Uriel feels about appropriate. Trinity is so unkillable. It's honestly really, really funny. Trinity is kind of known as the definitive support frame, and she just does a really great job at it. If you die with a Trinity on your team, maybe just take the day off Warframe, uninstall the game from your computer for a bit, I don't know, touch some grass, whatever. This frame does an excellent job, especially when played well, at keeping you alive. It's just really, really useful. Passive is pretty nice, getting some extra health. I won't say always has the most mileage, but it's definitely not bad. This is my Mark for Death setup, but Well of Life is a pretty solid ability. Is it her worst one? You could make the case for that, but this having the status immunity for your whole team within, like, I think my build has like a 150-meter radius. Let me check here. This is the roar one. This is the bay. Yeah. So like for me, this is 145 meters, and that's at 145. The base range is 100 meters, so you get 145 meters out of that build. And if you build more range, that's even crazier. So yeah, keeping your team alive with status immunity, huge. Healing, huge. Energy vampire, I think, would be a stronger ability. If there was, obviously the true damage is pretty nice if you do that, again, mark for death setup. But energy vampire is fine. We'll talk about this with Harrow in a minute, but basically, like, energy economy, most frames build for their own energy econ now because you can do that. So Trinity herself, just energy vampire has a little bit less value, but it's mostly for her, and that's fine. That means she gets to run blind rage when she runs a roar or whatever, which is pretty nice. Link is an incredibly solid tool. I use abating Link personally. I think it's really strong. More survivability, more ability to deal damage, really, really nice. And then blessing, of course, incredibly good, incredibly good. Just instant, same thing as Uriel, where you instantly bring yourself back up, but also your team, but also you get 75% DR, which is incredibly good for your whole team. Fast cast time, really love blessing. This frame just keeps everyone alive, and that's something that is pretty invaluable to have. Like, Trinity paid for the whole health bar, she's gonna get the whole health bar. Like, this playstyle is really fun, and there's some niche builds. I think that for me, I would put her in the A tier, which is totally acceptable. Obviously, like, a lot of her higher investment setups have the potential to achieve S tier outcomes, but I think if we're just talking base Trinity, nobody dies, nobody gets hurt. Trinity is like one of my favorite supports to have. I feel very safe in her presence. Titania is the fastest frame in the game, bar none. And so when you get a piece of content that wants the speed, she definitely gets it done, which is really nice. But her kit is kind of just that. And that's a problem, in my view, right? If you could remove every ability besides Razor Wing, the frame is nearly just as good. Although I will say Spellbind is actually pretty solid. The status immunity is pretty sick. But it's like 0.5 of an ability at that point. Dex Pixie absolutely just annihilates enemies really easily, especially with good investment, but even at like average investment, right, still does a really good job in my view. The investment is completely linear and one-dimensional. Kill more things, right? Fine. Tribute is like really cool conceptually, but the buffs are not strong enough in my opinion. And then Lantern, which I don't have here, this is my Thermal Sunder setup, but usually I do like Eclipse, Nourish, whatever, stuff like that. Do some cool stuff with Lantern and Damage Decoy, it's fine, but these abilities, they just don't cut it anymore. I think Tribute needs better buffs, and Lantern just needs a little bit more extra gas in the tank. This frame's good. There's no doubt. Like, but putting her in S tier on the merit of, like, oh, she's really fast, can kill everything with her guns, which is all off of one ability and one augment, by the way. Not saying that Razor Wing Blitz is exactly required, because I wouldn't say that it is. Here's a damage decoy setup I have, Eclipse, and then like the Nourish one, which I think is really strong. But yeah, and then also you need like Pistolier, which a lot of people talk about Pistolier, and I agree that it kind of band-aids her kit a bit. But also, like, the outcome you get from Pistolier fixes the problem so entirely that, like, whatever, I'm not going to complain about it. But yeah, Titania is part of the reason that my 30% kind of merit rule exists, because this frame is basically one ability plus Helminth, and that just doesn't cut it for me. So Titania ends up in A tier, but man, she is fast. Man, she is fun to play. Man, she is good. But I would like to play a more complete kit. Though I get similar outcomes with Uriel and Titania, the dopamine I get from Uriel is so much higher because his kit is a more complete one. But I can't put Titania in B because being that fast just feels like a crime. So yeah, let's move on. Temple is honestly a really curious case. They have really strong damage, above average survivability, and the universal heat damage they have access to is absolutely killer when it actually works. I'm not sure if it's still bugged or not. And Lizzie's just a really reliable Exalted. Pyrotechnics works in a lot of different setups, on and off of Temple themselves. Overdrive is a fantastic debuff, but it is kind of a debuff, which is the problem. It works really well on the backbeat. The whole backbeat mechanic is incredibly fun for ability efficiency. The way it gives Exalted solo infinite ammo, really nice, and I just love the backbeat. The bonuses are so sick. Love this Warframe's like a whole kind of kit unity coming together. So problems, right? Overdrive is a debuff as opposed to a buff, which means you have to spam cast it. It also has a 100-degree frontal cast instead of like a full diameter, which is just not great. And also, again, it's just kind of, again, you do give Ripper's Wail to your teammates, which is actually really strong. And I do like getting Temple in EDA, ETA because they're just very reliable, I would say. I would say Exalted Solo could be a little bit better, right? When we're talking Exalted weapons, there's just a lot of really strong ones, and Exalted Solo is a little bit weaker than the average Exalted weapon, which isn't really Exalted Solo's fault. I mean, especially if you look at, like, Gara, Baruch, VALKYR, stuff like that. This frame's survivability can be also a little bit inconsistent, especially at slightly more difficult stuff. Arcane Aegis and Ripper's Wail usually do get it done, but having to spam cast, also with the long cast, I'm a Ripper's Wail, kind of means you're gonna want some casting speed. I've got 2 Tau Forged casting speeds, and that kind of is enough to make me happy. Hot Shot synergy, absolutely amazing. There's a lot going on with Temple. I think they're really, really strong. I think having the reliable Exalted is really good for EDA, ETA. And I think if this frame could take Roar, I'm pretty certain that A tier or the S tier is possible. But this frame's just, yeah, A tier feels really, really fair for Temple. They are reliable, consistent damage. It's very unlikely they will die, but do they achieve the S tier outcomes? I'm not so sure. Again, if we could use Roar and get that, like, heat stuff going on that a lot of frames do have access to, I think that they would be S tier. But A tier feels totally acceptable, especially at that average investment caveat. STYANAX is probably one of the most underrated supports and underrated warframes, just in general. If there was some sort of, like, actual meta spear gun, I think, with his passive, I think this guy would cha-cha slide his ass right into S tier, for that critical chance doubling with spear guns. But with his shields, rather, like, that's how his passive works. Anyway, passive is solid. Axios Javelin is acceptable and becomes really great with the augment if you decide to play melee STYANAX. If you don't opt for it, there's plenty of great Helminth options. I'm actually in the middle of finding a new Helminth option right now. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go for. I don't actually want Nourish anymore, because I'm using Arcane Truculence over here, with Intrepid Stand in order to get some really good outcomes. Theros Lethality is also insane. It's a debuff, but it's a debuff you're applying 2 debuffs. So the case with, like, Overdrive is that you are only debuffing for the crit chance multiplier, right? Which is a good one. But with Theros Strike, you already want to armor strip the enemy, so now you're armor stripping and applying a crit damage bonus. That scales with strength. Pretty good stuff, if you ask me. Again, you can and it knocks back enemies well, Theros Strike, without that obnoxious ass ragdoll that some abilities do, and that's just really nice. The critical damage from the augment's nice. You end up with, like, infinite energy, basically, even with or without Nourish. You still get so much energy econ from Rally Point. And then the shields as well, the survivability from Rally Point. Amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. Final Stand is, one thing about Rally Point, I understand the energy econ's just not as valuable, and I think if it was valuable, STYANAX would be an S tier. But most frames do solve for their own energy econ at this point, which makes Rally Point, especially even with the Nourish combo, just being a little less valuable. Final Stand is really good, but it does really want Intrepid Stand to become a really, really good ability, especially worth casting, because there's a long casting time there, but it can nuke enemies pretty effectively. And yeah, so in terms of, like, why he's not S tier, I'd say Rally Point just isn't. The survivability is very nice. Keeping everyone's shields topped off is really, really good. But if we're talking, like, STYANAX has to be quite active in order for his stuff to work, unlike WISP, who can do it really, really easily. But STYANAX is kind of a Vault support adjacent, where, like, he does everything you want a support to do at a very high level, but it's not the highest level in the same way that WISP does. This frame is disgustingly easy to throw together. When everyone got a new STYANAX, that was some of the most fun I think new players had, because you just had infinite energy running around having a good time. Great build variety, Nourish, Roar, Wrathful, anything involving shields, running Truculence for the Overguard, with Intrepid Stand. Just, this frame is really, 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 really good, in my opinion. Definitely worth playing. Requires a little more thought than a lot of frames, in my view. And that will put him in S tier, or A tier very comfortably, rather. But I think if he had a little bit more going on in terms of damage, I think S tier is totally appropriate, but not every frame has to be damage incarnate, right? So yeah, STYANAX is very comfortably in A tier, and I think he's literally one buff from becoming S tier, in my view. SEVAGOTH is one of the more obvious S tiers on this list. As it turns out, a build that might as well just be going into the game admin console and typing delete on a unit with % max HP true damage is really strong. The Roar Reap So setup is just one of the strongest in the game, no doubt about it. You are just deleting an enemy for all their health points instantly. Like, yeah, that's really good. I wish there was more for SEVAGOTH to do, and if you want to play him a different way, like with Shadow, you can, and I've tried for it. I've tried with it, rather. But the best in slot build is just the Roar Reap So. It is so good. I don't really I wish it wasn't that way. I'll be totally honest. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. This frame nukes basically, especially like in his setting with his setup, with all the wheels turning. There isn't a frame that nukes better than this, hardly. SEVAGOTH's just the best at it, and I don't think that's what they were intending when they designed his kit, if I have to be totally honest, especially because it sits on Dark Propagation and Shadow Haze to operate. But this frame is just insane. Like, the damage is ridiculous, and again, I wish he was more in his shadow. I talk about that in my rework video, but this frame is really good. As it turns out, deleting enemies with that much ease is broken as shit. One thing that's exciting about him is that you kind of like want to build a little unconventionally around your loadout, because your only goal is to get like energy going, right? So with that being said, you don't have to build like your weapons. I use like the Tinted Galaxian here. I use a build with the augment to get energy. Grimoire, I use a setup to get energy. Praetos is obviously movement, and then Zedark to get energy. Like, you kind of play a little bit unconventionally, which is super, super fun. I could see a world where you even run like Sharpshooter, the sniper rifle that gives energy on this build, or sniper rifle mod that gives energy on this build. So that kind of like uniqueness in building is great, but like this frame is all thighs and Roar Reapso, and that's kind of all he does. S tier, without much thought, even though I do wish it could have been a little bit different. So with SEVAGOTH, we kind of give the S and piss off, and speaking of giving out S's and pissing off, we have SARYN, of course. If you don't know, SARYN's been one of the best. This is actually what a lot of people don't know this. This is actually what the S tier is named after, SARYN. A lot of people don't know that. Kidding. Damage on top of damage on top of damage. Both her weapon platform and spore setups are great. Synergizes incredibly well with a ton of different things. She like makes the synergy, right? It's kind of crazy. Like, it's not so much sometimes that the Sobek is strong with SARYN, or no, it's not so much that SARYN is strong with the Sobek. It's that the Sobek is strong with SARYN. SARYN is like one of the few frames that makes the synergy. Like, it's absolutely insane. And she's not banned from taking Roar. SARYN is not banned from taking Roar. XAKU, too strong, oh no! Right? But, yeah. So, or rather with Zada's Whisper. You have to take Zada's Whisper off. This frame can have it all. Who cares? I wouldn't mind sitting here and explaining why she's so good, and I doubt you guys need it. I don't think you guys want to hear me yap about this frame. This video is probably going to run long anyways, so check out my top 10 list if you really are interested. But SARYN has been so good for so long, and I'm just preaching to the choir at this point. So yeah, SARYN is the easiest S tier I'll ever give out. Absolutely ridiculous Warframe in every single iteration. Speaking of being strong in every single iteration, there's RHINO. This frame is just really good, and a lot of people are kind of... RHINO is just, it's got the original Roar, you stack a bunch of power strength, huzzah, there you go. That's a very high value, because Iron Skin, which is really good, whether you play it as like the temporary replaceable barrier, which is how I play it, or you bust out a spreadsheet to optimize it, it's just an incredible way to stay alive. Ironclad Charge and Reinforcing Stomp, with those abilities, they kind of find their way into builds as well to help with Iron Skin, but for me, I don't play that way personally, so usually they end up as a helmet slot. You get a lot of options. The fact that you can run Nourish and Roar, insane. Bright Bonnet, also incredibly good. Wrathful Advance, also incredibly good here because you stack so much duration, so much strength. I do wish Rhino Stomp and Rhino Charge had more to do, but like CC frame moment, right? Kind of a bummer. I think it still slows overguarded enemies, if I'm not correct, but that could be wrong. Not relevant compared to Roar though. Roar Iron Skin keeps this frame from dying, so he can give more roars. And get them really strong. I know Rhino mains like get a lot more value out of Iron Skin, or out of Rhino Charge, well, and Iron Skin too. Rhino Charge, Iron Skin, and Rhino Stomp. But for me, like as a kind of, I wouldn't call myself fair weather Rhino player because the weather's always fair for Rhino. But as someone who enjoys playing him occasionally, for me, I do just kind of play the brain dead builds, which is like Wrathful, Bright Bonnet, and Nourish. Those are just really comfy builds. This frame looks awesome. His passive stinks. But people who use the argument that Rhino is just Roar, and maybe just Roar and Iron Skin, right? Two good abilities, right? As leverage against him for him to not belong in S tier, I think are just flat out wrong, and they underestimate just how unique Roar is as a buff. And trust me, I don't want it to be that unique. I wish there were more options besides Roar, but Rhino having the original homegrown one and having great incentive to build more and more power strength, yeah, it's really strong as it turns out. So I personally use a Roar build, or Roar with hello, Nourish, Wrathful, and Bright Bonnet, and I use the Arbor Step with the Bright Bonnet to give the most insane Roar humanly possible. And yeah, this frame's just good, and shocking to nobody. The original Roar is great, Iron Skin's great. Let's move right on. Revenant's another S tier. Let's just place him there ahead of time. And try, like, you guys think I want to place him in S tier. You think I do it. That's just crazy to me. I don't like this frame. I wrote a whole rework on him that didn't even do that well. So, like, I try to defend my case there, but, like, anyway, I want to kind of address a comment here that I got a lot of in my top 10 video. And that's, hey, the ability to die isn't even that good. I get what you're saying. On an essential level, I do understand what you're saying. First of all, it definitely is that good, especially with the ease that that Revenant executes it at, right? A lot of frames can become effectively immortal, right? It's really shield gating, health gating, new persistence healing, stuff like that. But Mesmer Shield, or Mesmer Skin, and then Mesmer Shield mainly. Mesmer Shield is really a big part of what puts Revenant in S tier. I think if Revenant didn't have Mesmer Shield, or if Mesmer Shield scaled with range, or like literally anything to make Mesmer Shield weaker or not exist, I think puts him in A. But Mesmer Shield, the ability to protect your teammates with such efficiency, is insane. But alongside that, like, Reeve is actually a really good ability, and then because of the way Mesmer Skin scales, you have a reason to build a bunch of, not duration as much, but strength. So you get a really strong Roar as well, and you have a Precision Intensify slot, effectively. And Reeve is just really good with Roar as well. So, like, his meta setup, which in my view, this is it right here, is really, really, really strong. Thrall Pact is a decent enough augment, but Thralls could really use a rework, in my opinion. Your teammates just slaughter them like cattle. It's pretty annoying. But yeah, like, I really do think this frame is S tier. I think his accessibility to invulnerability is ridiculous. I think Reeve is really good, and when you pop Roar on him, which I think is a totally fine thing for average investment, absolutely insane. My problem with Revenant is not that it becomes immortal, it's that Mesmer Skin cannibalizes really cool parts of his kit, like the health shield restore on Reeve, like Enthrall kind of redirecting aggro, right? Mesmer Skin, like, there's no reason to do anything when Mesmer Skin exists. You press 2. It's super annoying, but in my view, I think you should give, obviously you still should be going Roar, but like, if you go a melee setup with Reeve, I think Revenant becomes like way more fun than usual. I also have a setup where I use the Cytoid and the Cedo, and I like fire the Cytoid grouping projectile out, and the Cedo glade into it, and then Reeve through it. Every enemy will conditionlessly die. It's kind of really fun. But yeah, I just, again, maybe it's up to some level of subjectivity, but this frame is S tier. The ease at which he can make him and his entire team immortal, because it scales with because Mesmer Shield scales with affinity range, is just ridiculous. Maybe if it scaled with power range instead of affinity range, we'd be having a different conversation, but because he can make himself so easily invulnerable and his entire team in the same way that a Trinity might, better than a Trinity might, arguably, he goes into S tier. I don't want to hear, obviously you can argue with me if you want, but it's the case, I believe. Making your whole team immortal is really strong. Alright, we wrote a really long high of S tiers. Let's get back to the ground. The concrete, if you might. I'm not trying to do a Nova Umbral cosplay or a shot in the back of the dome by the QORVEX Mafia. I do not feel that QORVEX feels... I bought the Tennogen skin, by the way. The Tennogen helmet, look how cool the helmet is. I'm a QORVEX fan, trust me, please. But this frame does not feel good to play in my view, especially outside of his optimal settings. When QORVEX gets to exist in his optimal environments with enemy density, and a tile set that doesn't make Wrecking Wall want to make me wreck my wall in real life, this frame really does fire on all cylinders. I have seen QORVEX do a lot. This frame is unquestionably good. Like, he can do things. But when we're talking average mastery and average investment, I simply don't think he can make it into A tier. Like, his passive is a contestant for one of the most underrated, like, passive abilities in the game. Like, three punch through is not a joke. That is pretty good. The CC value and a lot of radiation. There's been like 1 or 2, maybe 3 radiation synergies added in the old piece, which is pretty good for Charinka Pillar. Containment Wall / Wrecking Wall. This is honestly probably the biggest problem in his kit, in my opinion. I really don't like the way Containment Wall works. I'm not going to play armchair dev here, but it really feels like in practice this ability really bothers me. The coding on it is just really annoying. And Disometric Guard has one of the coolest ability names in the game, right? Of course, I've replaced it with Bright Bonnet and Arbicep. It's a really, really good combo. But Disometric Guard is just like status immunity with extra steps. And some frames, like Titania, just do that better. And even when I do try to like help my team with Disometric Guard, they just complain that it ruins their fashion frame, and that's ugly, which is very mean. I don't like that. And then Crucible Blast with the augment, Fused Crucible, definitely delivers and does really well. But the damage is good. I've seen it do really good things, and especially with like a setup, really, really high investment, really high understanding of QORVEX's mechanics, I think he can do a lot. But with the conditions of this tier list being, you know, very average, right? QORVEX just requires a really solid environment, mastery over that environment, and then mastery over the frame itself, along with high investment. He's good. He works well, functions properly in the setting that a QORVEX player a main would understand. But with my setting, with my, you know, pretext of it has to be an average investment, average mastery, I just don't think he cuts it into the A tier. I really don't believe so. He's going to be. I've tried Brightbond, I've tried Ophanimize. If you guys have any other synergies, please let me know. I want this frame to be better. I invested in the, look how cool, he looks so cool. He looks so cool. But this frame to me just feels disappointing to play for me personally. But if you have more tech, please, QORVEX Mafia, I have a family, you know, don't take me out, and teach me how to play your frame, because for me, I don't see it. But in terms of frames I do see and have always seen, it's Protea. I love Protea. I love this Warframe so much. Right back where we started in the S tier, Protea does literally everything. Shield gating, a ton of it. Zoning, really great zone control, a ton of damage, resources of every kind you can need, ammo, energy, health, really solid build variety. Her passive alone is just nuts, right? Giving that 100% power strength flat on every 4th cast is just so good for snapshotting things like Roar, like Gloom, shield satellites, blade grenades, incredibly useful tools for survivability damage. Blazing artillery does so much damage, especially when you build for it, and its base range is 30. The base range of blaze artillery is 30. I have a 100% invigoration for Protea right now. Absolute ridiculousness. Absolutely insane, especially when you have investment and mastery like taken into account. But obviously, even with average, Protea does a ton. Dispensary, obviously really great support ability, funding the energy, health, ammo, whatever you want, whatever tomfoolery you're trying to get up to, our guns, all that good stuff. Temporal Anchor I use in one of my builds, but not this one. It's really strong, and it can nuke really well. It's a little bit slow and clunky. I would say that is a higher level Protea technique, kind of, but it can be amazing for certain points of map traversal. Like, I actually use Protea to do my Archon hunts, so I use it to grab the Narmer Veil. What I'll do is I'll pop it like 200 meters away from the Deacon, blow the Deacon's shit smooth off, grab it, and then rewind back really quickly, and that leads to really fast Archon hunt times. And also, I do think that Protea, first of all, I have a Protea guide. You should go watch that, okay? It's pretty good. But yeah, Protea does like insane damage over insane range, and I think Temporal Erosion, which is the augment for her ultimate that lets you like shred armor, I think is unironically really good against armored targets. Like, it's pretty solid. You get like 20 seconds of all your abilities shredding armor, with all your damage abilities, so Grenade, Phantom, Blaze, Artillery. One thing I want to touch on with Protea, and she's going to S tier, by the way. I'm sure you guys have figured that one out by now. But her design is really well in that she gains damage from like non-direct damage sources, right? Like NOKKO, for example, is kind of cringe because you just kind of build like a little bit of range or a lot of range, but you really want to sink power strength into him. Protea gains damage from duration with Blaze Artillery because, like, obviously, the longer the turret stays up, the more damage it gets. The range with grouping, if you're able to group enemies, the more targets, because Blaze Artillery has infinite punch through, so if you hit on multiple targets, that's more multiplier. The multiplier on Blaze Artillery allows you to build, like, such different ways to the point where Ensnare actually, like, Ensnare or Larva or whatever, become damage helmets instead of just grouping, which is, like, so useful. Now, I still take Roar, and also, like, if you guys aren't aware, I have some tech I found, I'm sure someone else has found it by now. Arcane Concentration is so, I'm getting 10-second turrets with Arcane Concentration. You should really try that out. But I do have a Protea build and guide up right now on the channel, so you should go check that out. But this is one of my favorite frames by far, and it's an S tier without much contest. I won't even debate that. ORAXIA is a lot of fun to play. She plays like a real huntress, having a pretty accessible invisibility, a real precise assassin ability in the form of Mercy's Kiss, which is really fun. Webbed Embrace is really good. Her spiders do a pretty good job with zone control along with Webbed Embrace, and Scuttlers could definitely use some like scaling adjustments because I believe they just spawn at mission level and don't move up. And her synergy with Acid Shells and the Sobek kind of puts her in A tier on her own, in my opinion. Does that like kind of violate my 30% rule a little bit, but this frame also does operate incredibly well with weapons as less synergistic as the Acid Shell Sobek. Webbed Embrace just gives a big chunk of damage over a big area, which is really nice. And Silken Stride, obviously, especially if you're snapshotting for it effectively, does a whole ton. You know, I don't know why she gets health from this ability, to be honest, when she's meant to be clearly played as like an invis frame. It would make sense if she got like melee options, but unfortunately this frame can't use melee while inside of Silken Stride, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, Mercy's Kiss, basically infinite energy if you pilot even like remotely well. And this frame is like mechanically really fun. Silken Stride is one of the most fun abilities they've coded. Love it to death. The frame is quite selfish. Like Webbed Embrace, and like obviously if you're green sharding with Widow's Brood, then you could do like a really good amount of armor stripping. But she's also competing with SARYN, for a lot of what she has going on. Being locked out of melee playstyles kind of sucks. While SARYN can use melee to great extents. And her scuttlers have some scaling issues, and she's just, while she provides like an insane amount of raw power, it's not really like, first of all, it's not as raw as SARYN, which is like her S tier competition. And also she just doesn't provide as much utility as you might want one to provide. But she is like really one of the most fun frames ever. You can do the whole Hornet cosplay, as I've got with the little Nakana here. And if you're snapshotting properly and you're playing properly, this frame is like an insane amount of fun, does an insane amount of damage, and will never die, most likely. But in my view, A tier feels just about right for her. Sorry, spiders, please don't crawl into my home. Man, we cannot leave S tier for very long, can we? No, we cannot. Normally, I do the overdone bit about falling asleep while playing this frame, but luckily... Oh, shit. Fuck. Octavia goes invisible and has really solid energy economy, repeats enemies' damage back to them to a lethal extent, and yeah, that's really all you need to know. She can also buff her weapons to an insane extent, using AMP. She just does so much, and with my setup personally, I do run a pillage setup, which I believe to be quite strong. People have beef with this frame, right? People do, and this is I use Megalovania on my Octavia, but people have beef with this frame, including me. I think she's really boring to play, but you know, her outcomes used to be a whole lot more exciting, but now like every frame can do stupid damage and has access to stupid survivability, and that's a good thing for the record, but it just makes Octavia a little bit less special. And makes her position less unique. So there isn't much content that Octavia can consider challenging or engaging. And if you find this frame fun, you will have so much fun playing the Warframe video game. She's exciting to play in terms of like the frame, but then you actually like get in the game and have to press the buttons and it's like, oh, just kill me. I wish I saw more Octavia players. Look at her bounce around. That's cute and fun. I like that. Anyway, I wish I saw more Octavia players because I like hearing the music. Honestly, there should just be like a boombox emote where you can put in your own music. I think that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, the case is like if you can effortlessly slaughter hordes and never die with 0 effort, your frame is probably going to be S tier, and that's where Octavia finds herself. It's just, this frame's so good, man. And honestly, like, if you play her sparingly, I think you can have a good time with her. But if I had to play Octavia like every day for a week, I'd probably lose my mind a little bit. Frame's definitely really good though. I had a really hard time with this one on Oberon. I came to the conclusion that even an average investment, this frame just has a more balanced Mesmer skin. Like, don't even get me started with high investment. High investment Oberon is so stupid. He can easily opt for like arcane persistence if he wanted to. You know, and there's an absurd amount of like power budget in his passive, which is my biggest complaint with the Oberon rework. Smite has some weird built-in limitations that I don't really like, to be honest. But it's still very incredible at like, if you're using it actively with your brain, it still does a ton. But I think the current health limitation, it feels like a misplay by DE, to be honest. Hallowed Ground, there's new synergies with radiation that have come out with Old Piece, so that'll be kind of exciting. Also status immunity. Also, this is CC, which is radiation's like base form, which is pretty useful. Renewal is probably the biggest dud, and that's not saying much because it's still really strong. It's just that the augment for Reckoning provides the armor synergy plus the health orb drop synergy that, you know, Oberon needs to survive. And so Renewal, the armor from Renewal, unless you're using Battery, and even if you are using Battery, Reckoning becomes more viable. If you're using Persistence, you probably still want Renewal for the healing, but when you have the Reckoning augment, which let me show you my build here. When you have the Reckoning augment, Hallowed Reckoning, you kind of get a lot of the value from Renewal without having to use Renewal, and that means you can open up the Roar slot, which is good for everything, including your Smite. This frame is just unkillable, especially with even a decent setup, but once you even get to like moderately higher investment, the value from Smite is very high, the value from Battery very high, Universal Fallout super good. This frame is just nuts. This frame is just nuts. Maybe, arguably, you could say lacks in damage a bit, but if you use Smite properly, that's just not even the case. You get Roar on there. Health orbs are just so plentiful with even like the most minimal investment from mods, whether it is Reckoning you're getting them from, whether it's the synth mods. It's just so easy to get health orbs in this game, and therefore so easy to keep Righteous Negation up, to the point where it just feels like a Mesmer skin at that point. And because of that, I do think Oberon belongs in S tier. Probably one of my more controversial picks here. I just do believe that it is the case. In my opinion, Nyx is largely not really that interesting, but she is certainly immortal, even with the most like average build. This frame kind of does the most, right? again, like, I take Chaos off, I take Pacifying Bolts. Here, I'll show the build that I use. I use a large variety of builds. Not large, 3, I guess. But, yeah. So this frame has multiple ways to be piloted. The passive is really, really strong. That's just good damage. And with her kit, that is a very easy, you know, hump to clear, I guess. You just get a ton of crit chance on your whole kit, which is, or I guess it's just primary and secondary weapons. Haven't read into it that much. Nyx, in my opinion, is at least a little bit boring. Mind Control is exciting to use, especially if you build for it. Psychic Bolts is really good. The armor strip is just, it's really valuable. And you can steal Overguard, which is nice. Although when you are in your Absorb, I don't believe that your Overguard is protected, which is a shame. Chaos is fine, and I think with a lot of the you know, stuff going on with radiation, having 10 stacks will be more valuable than it was initially. But Absorb is obviously, and Assimilate by extension is kind of where it's at. The range and damage scales with the amount of damage you absorb, which means the cap of 50 meters does not scale with anything. It's always 50. So if you absorb enough damage on Absorb, you can explode even if you run a very negative range build like my own. You still do the max 50 meter explosion range, which is really nice. You have to tank a lot more, but that's fine. And Psychic Bolts is just really good, especially with Pacifying. Lets you keep that passive up without needing Chaos, which is really good. So yeah, does this frame, like, the main thing that keeps Nyx out of S tier for me is that she kind of really wants a good weapon. And that what a good weapon is for Nyx, because she can run Roar and Psychic Bolts is really good. What a good weapon is a pretty low bar to clear. But in my view, that's what keeps her in A tier. I've even considered B tier, but I think that the invulnerability is just so easy and accessible, and like I also use the mecha set on her, which I think I'm missing. I'm using the wrong companion right now, which is why it's not the full set. But you know, let me switch over here. Here we go. So yeah, now this is full mecha set, and I use the Paris Prime stat stick, and like that outcome works really well. I just think this frame can't fully stand on her own 2 legs, but she is still really, really good, especially when you pair with even like a decent weapon. So A tier feels fitting for me. Nova is just so damn good. She's obviously in my top 10, so you know where she's going to land here. Just the sheer amount of utility plus damage is absurd. Null Star, you give yourself insane DR and utility, especially with 2 of her augments, which are like the Molecular Prime and Null Star augments, right? Ton of damage, ton of survivability with very little investment. Antimatter drop, really good. Lets you turn those single target weapons into kind of AoE nukes, although it does require, it's a bit finicky. You would really want a primer, in my opinion. Wormhole is faster than a lot of speedster frames, especially when executed with high mastery, and does need kind of a decent tile set to work, which is annoying. But if you combine, if you don't take it, like I take Nourish here, Null Star and Nourish can be a priming tool for antimatter drop, and you've pressed only buttons on your keyboard as opposed to having to use a weapon, which is really nice. And obviously Molecular Prime, unreal good, one of the best abilities in the game. With a slowing form, you can trivialize a bunch of content and blow enemies up, and so much damage. The vulnerability and explosion, it's just so good. It's just like a straight up damage increase across like a huge area. And the speed boost version has the same damage upsides while also being able to speed up content that is problematically slow and tedious with like enemy spawns and stuff like defenses and whatnot. The duration is great, the range on it is great, and it's also very unique. I think she's the only frame that has, well, okay, Equinox can technically speed enemies up, but Nova does it infinitely better. And so with that niche, that alone puts her in a really, really strong category. Nova does so much with so little. This is one of the best starter, not starter frames, but if you give this frame early on, your outcomes are just going to be really beyond good. Great proto frame too, really enjoyed Kaya. This frame is just stupid. Nova belongs in S tier, and it's just not even close, really. NOKKO is a very strong Warframe, but I find that his kit leaves a lot to be desired, especially in terms of reroute. I have a reroute build here, I think. Yeah, I mean, this isn't like a perfect setup, but reroute is like the cutest, most fun ability ever. But as it stands, like, I don't think it does enough. I think it's like pseudo mobility, mostly survivability, and you can pick up the orbs to gain speed and more defense stats. Passive's great, but like it's kind of like the Wukong argument where it's like, well, okay, what if I had like a real passive that helped me survive instead of just dying? That's kind of lame, because having to reset up your mushrooms after resin is like super annoying, even though like Bright Bonnet makes it a little bit easier. Stink Brain's pretty good. I enjoy Stink Brain. Just really good viral priming, putting enemies to sleep. The grouping on it is decent. It can become a little bit suboptimal if you're max ranging, because of the nature of the sleep. It'll sleep them around the ring as opposed to in one area, but the viral priming is great, right? Bright Bonnet is obviously the star of NOKKO's kit. This means you can do the Brain Dead Strength Dump, which will let you combine with Roar to get insane outcomes on NOKKO. Again, Also, infinite energy economy is always pretty good. Reroute, frowny face. This ability is so cute. I love it to death. I think it needs to do more. It makes me kind of sad. Like, I wish maybe it paused the durations on your mushrooms. Maybe it added, maybe while you're in reroute, your spore spring bounces faster or can bounce additional times for higher multipliers. Reroute needed to be given some sort of damage element or utility element besides just survivability, because in terms of survivability, it's no different than having his optimal setup, in my view, which is the Harass, Kubro, or Shade setup. And that setup gives you insane damage because you get to run Roar. But being invis with the Harass Kubro is the same as being in reroute. It's arguably better because you're never taking damage because you're invis, and that also means that the slot is free to take up Roar. So while reroute is so cute, I love this ability. I love the whole theme of NOKKO. I think it's incredible. I love this frame. But I wish his best in slot build wasn't the invis stuff. My most used build is evade, which I think is a really strong setup. But ultimately, I just the Harass Kubro Roar setup is just so disgustingly strong because of its nature to dump a bunch of strength and get some range in there, and then stay invis and just have your Spore Spring do a gazillion damage. This kit is fun. His farm, absolute burnout bait. Please DE not again. The concept of turning the mushrooms was very cute, but the volume and the repeated nature of the content was absolute agony. So yeah, NOKKO's fun. NOKKO's good. S tier, I don't believe so though. I really don't. Definitely strong, but again, very one-dimensional, a lot of damage, but that's really it. The energy util is quite nice, but energy util just has less value. The power strength util, pretty good actually, pretty good. I would say it's nice, but you have to like sit around the bright bonnet, which some Warframe players they love moving and they just won't do, which is annoying. But the frame is definitely good. I would not say S tier though, personally. I think A tier is totally acceptable for NOKKO. NIDUS is a frame who can really only excel. God, look at this. Look at this. I love this fashion frame, man. Look how cool he is. I love this Warframe. Anyway, he can really only excel within his own domain. It's very similar to QORVEX, but honestly, it's arguably a little bit worse. His Undying passive works pretty well, and I really do love the stacking mechanic. I think it's so fun. Virulence can do good damage, help stack, and teaming Virulence leads to quite a lot of critical chance and like decent base duration. So no complaints there. Larva is usually the kind of grouping I get really annoyed with, like Airburst, like the stuff that ragdolls, but within Nidus' own kit, it works really great for, groups of Virulence. Parasitic Link, amazing in cooperative content with teammates, but even when you don't have teammates, still really, really strong stuff. You can use it with Spectres, I think, so that like leads to a decent enough outcome. My favorite build I've been running is Theros Strike over Ravenous. Ravenous needs to be better. I see what Brimstone can do for a map. I want a Brimstone-like effect on Ravenous. Like, I want the whole map covered in infested shit like that. I think that'd be so cool. But my current setup with 3 augments, I guess I could show it to you guys. It's not perfect, and like there are worlds where I really kind of want to use Abundant Mutation, but my ass is not equipping 4 augments. This setup allows for Arcane Persistence usage, because Nidus is status immune during Parasitic Link. This hits the persistence threshold, and allows me to just heal a whole bunch. Parasitic Vitality is very good, Teaming Virulence is good, and Theros Lethality ends up with a 286% multiplier, which is really, really insane for critical damage. So we get a bunch of critical chance with Teaming Virulence, critical damage with Theros Strike. This build, when they're grouped with Larva, is really good. And the Tremor Prime isn't even that good with the Nidus, in my opinion. It's just a really fun one. So I think this frame needs help. But a lot of it is his kit's fault. Or it says Warframe's fault, not his kit's fault. Although Ravenous needs to be better, and I think Parasitic Link should have a little duration that lasts after you detach. But this frame just beats here. If you like Nidus and you like playing Nidus, you can get very good outcomes with him, just provided you're in the content where Nidus is good. And that content isn't always going to be there for you, which really, really sucks, unfortunately. I think this is where I'm going to get the most heat. I'm sorry, I'm not placing NEZHA in S tier just because a single augment is broken as ever living shit, right? The 30% rule I possess exists to ensure a frame is it 1 ability, 1 augment, 1 synergy or helmet Andy, and it safeguards NEZHA from S tier in my view. They're going into A. I think femboys are great. You be you. I can't put them in S tier in good conscience. The slide passive is super fun. Firewalker is one of the most underrated abilities in the entire game, including as a helmet option. Blazing Chakram is pretty good damage, but I think leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of the teleport. I wish the teleport on Blazing Chakram was a little bit better. Warding Halo generally suffices in terms of keeping you alive, and then Divine Spears with Divine Retribution. Yeah, it's broken as shit. I know. Like, I know. I get it. I've seen it a million times. It was like the longest clickbait like session of Warframe history I've ever seen. It's so whatever. It's very strong. It's a very strong nuke, and especially because NEZHA is so accessible early on, and the setup you need to make Divine Retribution is like the true nuke build is really low investment. I would strongly recommend you get this. You know, if you're a newer player without a really strong build, Divine Retribution NEZHA is a great direction to go, and it's a must invest in my opinion. I use Thermal Sunder because I use Thermal Transfer, but I've been experimenting with some NEZHA stuff. So yeah, this frame is really good. Obviously, the nuking is ridiculous. It's not as good as SEVAGOTH in my opinion, but it's still incredibly good. And yeah, well, I get it. Divine Retribution is nuts. Yeah, we understand. Frame's fun. Slide passive is good. Movement's good. Bit of a caster. You know, you have to find some energy economy solutions in the same way that you do with SEVAGOTH, but in my view, it's just SEVAGOTH light in terms of nuking, but you get like the rest of your kit is really cohesive. I just refuse to put this frame in S tier just because they have one really broken synergy build / augment. Sorry if that bothers you, it's just kind of how I do these lists. NEKROS is the old man who just never really got tired of working and is just happy to be here. Desecrate has kept this frame relevant for longer than my brain can conceive. I haven't seen a single cast of Soul Punch since the old war, right? But to be honest, I don't think it's that bad of an ability in terms of maintaining your Shadows of the Dead. But Shadows of the Dead is the biggest problem in this Warframe's kit. Okay, I'm gonna be 80 years old and dead by the time like Shadows of the Dead finishes casting. It's ridiculous. It's the worst part of Nekros. It's not even close. Terrify is an above average piece of CC and armor strip. Nothing to be shy of there. It's pretty good. Some Warframes even take it as their subsume. And just like Nekros brings bodies from the ground, Desecrate brings this frame from the ground from B tier. He's not awful, and honestly, with like Nourish and Gloom setups, which are the two that I've played, he can be kind of fun. He doesn't get much to do, but he's just happy to be there, right? Desecrate's super good. He's probably got a persistence build somewhere. Health conversion's pretty good. He can stack armor, and Shadows of the Dead, it has a really good augment. Same with Desecrate's Despoil. But for me, like, staying alive on Nekros hasn't been a huge issue. It's just the problem is you do lose 2 mod slots in basically every single build, which is pretty annoying. But this frame's Desecrate stacking with things like Korra and Hydroid just mean he's, in my view, just always going to be A tier, and I don't see him leaving that tier anytime soon unless Desecrate is reworked. Just my opinion. And when Desecrate works for like 2 days or like 24 hours after like some sort of like, I don't know, like the commandeered Warframes or the Sisters during the Jade event, like Desecrate working for like 2 days after that is always so OP. So yeah, Nekros is getting A tier. He's probably never moving from here, to be honest. Mirage sits in a pretty similar boat as SARYN and just gives you like damage on top of damage on top of damage. Like her passive is really great mobility. Her one is damage, which gives you more damage, which gives you survivability, which gives you damage with the augment. Stupid. Sleight of hand is usually gonna be an augment slot or rather a helmet slot. God, I've been talking for so long. It's draining. Anyway, really good helmet slot, but if you are nuking at lower levels, like in ESO, Sleight of Hand with the augment Ledger Main, Explosive Ledger Main, I believe it's called, is really strong. Eclipse, obviously really strong, one of the highest multipliers in the game you have access to, and it's super easy to get, especially if you're doing high investment Mirage stuff, and you get kind of a panic cast if you decide to get the damage reduction part, which is 90%, which is really strong. And then like Prism can nuke at like pretty generously high levels, but you usually would get more done with a good weapon. And that's kind of Mirage's thing. She can do well with Prism within her own kit, but she is meant to have a weapon strapped to her and to deal really stupid amounts of damage. This frame is largely pretty uninteresting to me, but gets the job done every time. And like, again, she's really fast, which I think is super fun. But like that, you know, you strap our gun to her, you have her run through a mission, and like that's it. I don't think this frame does much with her own kit in like the same way that like LAVOS might, and like cool shit like that. But if you put a good weapon on her, like, and you enjoy that damage, and that's where you get your dopamine from when you play Warframe, yes, this frame is very good for that. So Mirage, as you know, she made it in my top 10. She will be making it into S tier without many questions from me. MESA has one of the highest investment ceilings in the game. Whether that's premium arcanes, archon shards, focus ultimates, MESA, primarily because of Peacemaker and the exalted regulators, can basically extract value from damn near every single piece of a loadout, unlike any other Warframe. And it's not just niche builds either. There's a good amount of really strong helmet choices, archon shards, weapon synergies, like the Cedo Glaive with ballistic battery, even though the ability isn't that great without its augment. I'd say this frame can be a little bit rough if you don't understand her, or you have like maybe a little lower investment. But once you hit that average point, and especially once you go above average with MESA, this frame becomes so stupid. It's just really good abilities. I mean, Shooting Gallery plus Shadow Shield is a really fundamental combo that just makes you basically impossible to kill. And then Peacemaker is just damage on top of damage on top of damage. If you build her well, use external synergies like the Fear X Wraith, like Archon Shards, like power stacking. The frame is just so good. There's a couple really strong options. I've tried Pillage, I've tried Nourish, I've tried Null Star. Like, I've done a few things, and they all seem to work great. Right, Regulators is just where she gets a lot of her value. I do generally recommend the full strip shards, but it's not really necessary. You could probably go one green corrosive shard, and then the rest are the secondary topazes. But it's totally up to you. Again, there's a lot you could do here. I do parkour velocity because, you know, I like moving around with Mesa's Waltz, even though it's not really necessary to roll around that fast. This frame is just really good. Been good for a long time. Isn't gonna not be good for a long time. Our gunslinger is here to stay for a while, probably. Admittedly, there's a little bit of bias here because Mag was my starter frame, and to be honest, despite her placement, I still believe she's a bit of a synergy merchant. Like, but she just gets so strong with her synergies that, like, you lead to such high tier outcomes. It's kind of ridiculous. But the synergies aren't all high investment. You get like one decent weapon that works with Magnetize, and it's pretty broad in terms of what you can get done. But like, you can get it leads to very strong outcomes. The only real thing that could put this frame down is like a Toxin proc, and there's a million ways around that. So Magnetize is just a really strong ability. It does so much, and you don't really need the usual like power strength tanking or like stacking that you usually need for like a nuke build. It's really a synergy with your weapons instead, which is really strong. Crush kind of needs its augment, which is a bit annoying, but helps do a lot, right? The armor strip's nice, it breaks their legs, which I guess makes sense, it's called Crush. Mag and Magnetize are similar to Mesa and her Peacemaker. If you invest heavily into these parts of the kit, you stand to gain so much. This frame is really good. I personally use a Breach Surge setup, though there are a few setups, like there's one with Blood Altar that works really well with Magnetize. There's a lot of good stuff going on with this frame. I'm putting her in S tier along with Mesa, who I just totally forgot to place. But yeah, I think Mag is really strong. Again, is she a bit synergy reliant? I could say so, and I could see the case for A. But when she works, oh my god, there's nothing enemies can do, like, at all. It's disgusting. Oh man, Loki is a frame you can select in the video game Warframe and do things with. Damage, Decoy, and Safeguard are basically mandatory to make his kit function. Invisibility is super nice. Radial Disarm is an ability that you can use. It's fine with the augment. I used to be a member of the Loki Master Race back in the day, and I really do understand the appeal of this frame. Basically can't die with even a slightly below average setup. That's certainly nice. Damage Decoy allows for some really solid stuff, but most of it can be done just as good, if not better, than other frames. Most of it. I think Loki's got some unique stuff, especially with Marked for Death. Call it a skill issue. I don't care. I really only play Loki when I want to use infested mobility builds on spy missions, in which he's not even the best for that, but for me I find it fun. Or I want a cozy experience playing a cool looking frame, because I love this Heimdall skin, which is the one I use here. Looks baller as hell with a giant sword. I use the Phallus with Wrathful Advance. Super fun setup. This frame can do things, he can, but it's really difficult. Trying to make this kit work properly without outside help, even with it, just sucks. I understand Loki Master Race is very passionate about this frame. I'm currently working on a rework for him at the moment, so I do have a question. Obviously, this frame just needs help, and whether it's Warframe's fault or Loki's fault, which I do lean towards it being Warframe's fault, there's just not much you can do. Right? It sucks, but there just isn't much you can do. This frame can do things, but not better than any other frame. That's just how it is. Invulnerability is like the thing he does close to as good as S tier options. So I will ask this because I am working on, he's going in B tier, by the way, as I'm sure you could imply. How Loki players, how attached are you to Loki's ultimate? Because I'm currently rewriting an entire ability right now, and I'm trying to determine whether I want to put it onto Loki or add it as a separate Warframe ability video for a custom ability I'm making. So how attached are you to Loki's ultimate? Loki players or even non-Loki players? I'm just very curious. Frame is B tier. He's not fun to play for me. He doesn't do anything cool or unique in my view, minus a few things that are inconsistent at best. Just my personal opinion. You can make him work. I know he's good. I know he can operate. But he's B tier for my list. He's nowhere near A in my view, nowhere near S in my view. So yeah, sorry to hear it, or sorry to say it, but that's just what I believe. Please don't be toxic in my comments. Speaking of being toxic in my comments, I'm kidding. Most of you guys are pretty nice, but Limbo's position in B tier. We're popping him there right now. it really belongs to the fact, it lies solely in the fact that average mastery is just simply not enough to get S tier outcomes out of Limbo. It's just not. His entire kit works like fairly solidly in tandem, but the visual clarity beyond blows. It is so hard for the average Limbo and any teammates to tell what's going on. Not only do you have to know how his kit works, but your teammates do too, and it leads to such a frustrating experience. You're tormenting your weapons platform teammates. It sucks. Limbo mains will probably crucify for me this, but I feel like a lot of this frame is carried by Rift Torrent. Executing Rift Torrent and using its abilities properly is one thing, and of course takes like a good amount of skill. It does like lie within Limbo's kit itself. But like there needs to be some sort of execution of this frame's concept, and to be more friendly to teammates and more visually clear. I've used Breach Surge, I've used Smite, those are the main ones I've used. Smite's nice because it gets like Xmas enemies overguard stripped right off, so I can deal with them myself. Silence is also a great option I've tried. You guys can fight me on this, and I know Limbo players are very passionate, but I'm just not interested. He's in an okay spot, right? He's good, he works. But I think he could benefit a lot from some kind of touch-up. He relies a good bit on like his domain expansion, understanding your area, as well as QORVEX or NIDUS might have to. And I'm not saying he has to become sort of Nucrim or whatever. I like the way his kit works. I think his concept is one of the coolest, if not the coolest, out of all the Warframes. But make it more cooperative. Streamline the kit a bit. I really think he could benefit from it. So yeah, Limbo makes him B tier, but I do believe that he becomes A to S once you have a high mastery and then a higher investment in his kit, but mainly mastery. You really need to understand what you're doing on this frame. The average player will have a mental breakdown playing this frame. I strongly believe that. LAVOS has a very, very complete kit, and one that is like so much fun to execute, especially if you enjoy combos. I do really think that higher mastery is a little bit required to get the S tier outcomes, and so for that reason he is going into A tier. But his passive is incredible, right? Making you really tanky. This allows you to do things with like arcane persistence if you want to, because your armor can't be degraded, which is nice. Ophidian Bite's really strong if you cycle it properly. Augment's pretty strong as well. I run Null Star, I've run Vile Rush, I've ran Evade. His setups are really good. Valence Formation does a lot of heavy lifting for the less good LAVOS players, but for the good ones, you just get some ice cream on your cake, like whatever. You know what I'm saying? You just get a little extra. A lot of fun. Transmutation Probe does a lot for your kit in terms of the cooldowns. If you are good at LAVOS, I'm going to say this maybe as a slightly above average LAVOS player, I will say, if you are even slightly above average at his mechanics in terms of mastery, the cooldowns are a non-issue. I don't know if that's not rage bait. I promise. If you're good at LAVOS, the cooldowns are not a problem. It's just how it works. This frame is really good, can achieve really good outcomes, but I do believe some mastery is required, and for that reason, I place him in the A tier. Though his S tier outcomes are very possible with an hour of YouTube videos or whatever, and really understanding how his kit works. But his kit is super good. So A tier for LAVOS feels like home to him and to me. KULLERVO is obviously insane. This is the easiest S tier of my life, for sure. Just one of the melee goats. Recompense with its augment makes him effectively immortal. Collective Curse is one of the single best abilities in the entire game. And Wrath of WUKONG works really well for nuking, but I opt for Nourish here. I even have an evade set up with a sniper rifle because I find it so fun. This frame is really good, obviously. And the thing is, he separates himself from the melee crowd because he can use Collective Curse to become a gun platform for bows, snipers, shotguns, weapons that usually struggle with AoE. Boom, Collective Curse, you're done. Helmet options out the wazoo, and a Precision Intensify slot at that if you decide to use it, which is really good. Wrathful Advance is obviously great. He has the original one, so there's no nerf. No complaints there. And then obviously Recompense keeps him alive forever. This frame is just one of the best. Whether it's melee, whether it's gun, it really doesn't matter. This frame is so good. Hard to kill. Insane damage. A little bit selfish, I'd say, but because of Collective Curse, I do genuinely think this frame is S tier, and because of Collective Curse, and again, Wrathful Advance is like good stats, and being immortal isn't always, as we've shown with Loki and B tier, being immortal isn't always the best, but Recompense still keeps him alive. So with Collective Curse, with that Precision Intensify slot, and UKO if you decide to use it, and Wrathful Advance, this frame makes it into S tier without, in my opinion, much thought at all. Let me preface with this. I am a Kome player. I, Turbo Monk, YouTube creator guy of Warframe. I play Kome. I have 7 Forma in my Kome. I have 5 Archon shards in my Kome. I love this Warframe. She is going into the B tier. This frame is not very good in my view. I have to dedicate 3 mods here to survivability. Catalyzing shields, Vigilante Vigor, Fast Deflection. This shield setup is incredibly strong. Can you health tank? Yes. I'm sure there's a persistence setup by now anyway. But in order to get Roar, which is the main way to buff my penance or my decrease from Omokuji, I have to use Roar. This setup is very good. I like the mecha set a lot. I think I'm going to try to figure out how to fit the last part of mecha here at some point. But whatever. I'll probably do like, I don't know. I'll figure something out here. Anyway, this frame can be made to work, but you have to work really hard. I have a very custom, the reason I use Rush in this slot is to achieve the CO part of Latron Prime. I use Cold Corrosive to help with my Omokuji. I use Heat Base here. I know in my brain that Incarnin will give me Blast here, so I use non-Incarnin Latron shots for Cold for my Omokuji challenges. I shoot them in the body, knock the head with my Toxicist for the heat challenges, and the Harmony I have an influence set for the electric challenges, and for the Toxin challenges, I just pray that my Bunraku procs properly. I also have an Evade build that I like a lot. Oh lord, yeah, as you can see, I have 5 setups here too. I don't play with Kome. I don't play, I mean, I play a lot of Kome. I don't play with this frame. I love this frame. I don't play games. That is what I'm saying. And this frame, her one ability is a dud, and is anti-synergistic with Bunraku. Omokuji requires an augment to function, basically, which sucks, and Omamori's pretty good. But this frame needed a little bit more time in the oven, in my opinion. Is she one of my favorites? Absolutely. But is she really a test of your skill? Like, this frame requires really high investment. I use all my best weapons I can, including the Harmony synergy. I use Vazarin to group for finishers. Like, the fact that she has no built-in finisher mechanic, huh? Like, why? She literally finishers are half of her decrees, not half. That's bad faith. But she needs it for a lot of her decrees. This frame feels incomplete, but she is so fun to play. The gambling part's really fun. I think this frame with a minor rework would be one of the most fun and exciting and good frames to play, but I understand why they want to keep the gimmick part of her kit there, and that's fine. My first ever two of my first videos on this channel were on Kome, one on her augment and one is as a full guide, so don't take this in bad faith, because I think a lot of people don't like Kome. I love this frame, but the frame needs help. How that help is executed, I don't really care. But the fact that I need to pull out all the stops to make her as good as possible is kind of telling the strength of this frame. So yeah, Kome makes it into B tier. I'm very passionate about her, trust me, but she's not making it higher than that. Korra is obviously really, really, really good. She made it in my top 10, so I won't like elaborate too much. But yeah, this frame is really good. You get basically your passive is an entire second moddable companion with a pair of moddable claws. Like, come on, dude, really? Whip Claw is just brain dead easy to use. She's super easy to build, and like, also, Korra goes deceptively high investment. Obviously, like, the Tau Forge purples are like a huge part of her kit, which I don't like engage with much because I don't like Korra all too much. But with Lycath's Hunt, you basically have infinite energy, Striggle Dome, and the Pilfering Striggle Dome augment help a ton. I believe in terms of farming, Korra plus Nekros is the optimal combo 100% of the time. Ensnare, Amazing CC, works on, what do they call it? Acolytes, for no reason at all. Insane grouping, that even some frames use it as the best grouping tool that they have available in the Helmet system. And yeah, free Helmet slot because of Venari you still get Venari even if you take the ability off, which is just so stupid. This frame there's not much to say here. This frame is really, really good. Yeah, 2 companions and a very spammable one that gives you like infinite shield getting potential and 1 gazillion damage, turns out. Pretty stinking good. I like Korra a lot. Conceptually, to play her, I don't like frames that give me arthritis and carpal tunnel, so not really for me as much. But for farming, she's always my go-to pick. And she's a lot of fun. I see why a lot of people like her. She's a fun, enjoyable, easy frame with a good investment floor and skill floor. But in terms of investment, it goes really high with investment. You can get a really strong Korra with a lot of resources, obviously. Jade is really, really, really interesting, and I'm just gonna go ahead. I forgot to. I just placed Korra in S because that was obvious. My bad. Jade's going in B tier. Now, Jade's interesting. She does a lot. Granted, like Power of 7 is really good. Power Strength, the Deathbringer is pretty good, and I would say Spirit of Resilience is quite underrated. I think that I wish the damage vulnerability of Light's Judgment scaled. That would be really, really nice. Unfortunately, it does not. So the healing in it is okay, but it's percent based, which like is good for certain frames. But the problem is when Jade tries to use it herself, you don't heal for as much because you're healing for a percent of your health, which is really annoying in my opinion. I wish this came with like a flat heal as well. It unfortunately does not. But the Judgment's really strong, and you could place a lot of these, and the range on them is pretty generous. Jade's fun to play from like a weapons platform perspective, but her ult's also really fun too. I wish there was a way to get two of these buffs moving at once. That'd be really great, but the duration is very easy to keep up if you're using her one properly, or maybe getting lucky with Glory on High. Usually I don't get much value out of the duration refresh on Symphony unless I'm using Light's Judgment. Ophenomize is really good. Really like Ophenomize. It can be snapshotted from Power of the 7, which is really good. I really like the synergy. I like the synergy of casting, like having a tactical pattern to casting your abilities. I think it's really good. And the Glory on High is definitely one of the most fun auditory experiences. I love the sounds that Jade's abilities make. Unfortunately, I just have a bad build, but like really getting a lot of value out of this. Like my builds do decent, but just compared to like other exalted forms, not that great. I have a build here which I've been experimenting with, which works pretty well. And then where is it? This build is like my favorite. I think this is it right here. Yeah, the Jade's Judgment build with the Hurgas Kubro is so fun. I love this build to death. Jade's Judgment, this is like a fine enough augment, but like fun. It's definitely one of the most fun augments. Being able to yield the Jade Light Xmas stuff by yourself is like so beyond fun. See, I like this frame. If you have any Jade advice, let me know. I like this frame a lot, but the fact that like a lot of her survivability is built into like her most important damage elements is kind of lame. Having to swap between the three is a little bit annoying, while some frames, well, actually a lot of frames, do a better job at a lot of what she does. She's a very broad frame, not in the sexist term, but in like she covers a lot of things. I just think she could be a lot better, but she's okay. She's fun to play. In terms of her exalted form, it just kind of feels like a dud to me. Feels like a precision intensify slot sometimes, and I really do think the damage vulnerability on Light's Judgment should scale with power strength, along with the health per second not being a percentage based, or having a flat health buff, as a lot of like most flat shielding and flat healing abilities do nowadays. But yeah, Jade's fine, but B tier does feel proper for her, at least for my level of mastery and investment. I mean, I have some form in her. I have her fully sharded. I just don't think that she's that great in my opinion, compared to especially a lot of the better frames following up here. Okay, let's make this one clear again. Actually, a lot of people don't seem to like Avara. Maybe I don't have to do the same like fanboy disclaimer as I usually do. I love Avara. I play a lot of Avara. I think she's really fun. I'm just showing off my fashion frames. But my problem with her, she's just really slow, and like it requires a lot of mechanical mastery to get used to Prowl and Dashwire Arrow and like swap. I void sling a lot on Avara too. As you can see, I have 3 parkour velocities here, top forged. Her kit's fine. It works great. Navigator has niche interactions, and I think it's fine as a niche fun ability. I try to incorporate it. Like I use it with the Grimoire. I think it's got pretty good usage through that. Her one is booty ass without the augment, in my opinion. Granted, I've been using Empowered Quiver for so long that I forgot how much this ability kind of sucks on its own, especially the Stealth Arrow, because you already have Prowl. There's a world where you use Stealth Arrow to keep like teammates alive and stuff and secure reses, but like not really. That's me like LARPing like this game is harder than it is, which it just isn't. Artemis Bow is fine, but I would like it to get buffed. I really would like it to get buffed. The augment is fine. It makes feel a lot better to use, but like landing headshots with it is just a pain. There's not enough mod slots. You don't get access to you can't have a Riven, so it's kind of, I don't like Artemis Bow a lot, especially because other weapons are just so much stronger on her. I use the Miter Incarnon, which has the increased fire rate with channeled ability. Prowl is a channeled ability. I use Roar with Precision Intensify, I believe. Let me check this build. No, maybe not actually. Yeah, so this is the build I use personally. I think it's really strong. I could probably opt for like something more. I could probably do. I just have the Umbral Forma needs to be reworked by. God, I hate Umbral Forma. Anyway, I'd probably do a Precision, or I'd probably do not a Precision. Here, I'd probably use like an Archon Intensify and then switch this with Combat Discipline. But whatever, that's like a whole other story. Anyway, this frame is not great. She really needs a good weapon. Artemis Bow is like acceptable, but really clunky to use. Navigator is whatever. This ability, Quiver sucks without help. The headshot multiplier is really nice. I like it a lot in a Prowl. I also use like the Paragale with her a lot. I have a whole LIVARA guide. I'm very passionate about this frame, but I really think she's outdated and could use some love from DE. Is she the most urgent in need of a rework? I don't think so. Some commenters in my rework video mentioned that, but yeah, she's B tier for me. I just don't think she's that great. But is she fun to play for me and my playstyle? Absolutely yes. So yeah, let's move on. Oh yeah, also, before we move to Inaros, LIVARA has really high base energy, which means our primary overcharge is probably going to be really good on her. But let's talk about Inaros now. Okay. This frame was made so much better. We're just going to pop him in A. Obviously, he would have been B before. But persistence breaks this frame beyond belief. I still believe his kit is a little one-dimensional, and Sandstorm's great grouping. I wish Desiccate was a little bit better, so I keep it on. This is my personal setup. I think Roar is really great here. I think I have a Roar build. Yeah, I have a Roar, Elemental Ward, and then shock build. I use for the cats. I give the cats Shock Trooper. This also forces melee influence on my hate, which I use. Yeah, nothing too crazy going on here. I use Emerald Shards to full strip. Scarab Shell, status immunity, which is great for the sake of persistence. Tornado, or Sandstorm rather, with Elemental Sandstorm is really good viral priming, by the way. But additionally, insane grouping, underrated grouping. It also lets Inaros move throughout a map and heal a bunch while also being unimpeded by any slows. I was using this with I was unironically, okay, for this video I was farming Dagoth because I subsumed her before I could even get the chance to really play her, because I just wanted to complete the Helminth and I didn't get to play enough, so I used Inaros to do the Abyssal Beacon stuff, and yeah, Sandstorm lets you move despite any impedance to your movement, which is really nice. And then obviously Scarab Swarm for the cats is absolutely lovely. You can buff the cats, right, which is good, and then full stripping with Corrosive. This frame is very complete, but what he does just isn't anything too glamorous, but he's really fun to be completely brain dead and strap a good melee to and get to work. He also looks quite cool in my opinion. So Inaros I played a little bit more of recently, but pretty low investment to make really OP in my view. So yeah, he absolutely works, does the trick, no complaints there. This is my Hydroid based off of the Reaper Leviathan from Subnautica, and I'm placing Hydroid in the B tier. Which sucks, because I think this frame is actually really fun. I think he has conceptually a lot going on. I use builds both with Tidal Surge, without Tidal Surge, with Tentacle Swarm, without Tentacle Swarm. I've used Nourish, I've used Wrathful Advance, I have a Aurora build here. There's a lot to love about this frame. It's just that, I think in terms of loot, Korra's got him absolutely beat with no questions. And then, okay, his passive is no longer unique. It just takes 2 shards to fully strip armor. The bonus corrosive damage from Plunder is good. The bonus armor is good. That means he can get a persistence setup very efficiently. Tidal Surge is also amazing. You can give yourself status immunity. The mobility on it's very fun. Grouping on it's pretty good. And Tempest Barrage is obviously very good with Viral Tempest. This frame is incredibly complete, but there is literally nothing in this game I can conceive that he does better than any of the A tier or S tier options. He's good. He works. Strap a melee to him. Strap a good gun to him. Whatever you want. He looks cool as shit. Look at this. Kidding me? You got fish and amazing. But in my view, he just doesn't do enough to warrant any higher on this list. I don't think he's bad. He's just not very glamorous. But he gets the job done. When we get to a couple other frames, they'll have similar spots. But I don't think Hydroid does anything at a S tier level. With higher investment, he can. But at that point, he's just dancing with the S tier, A tier frames, with more investment and more effort than them. That's just my personal opinion. I think his rework was fine. I don't think this frame needs any more changes really. But he's just fine. Some number buffs wouldn't kill him, but he just plays fine in my opinion. And again, maybe if I had a little more time on him over Korra and over Nekros, I'd want to play him more and maybe place him a little bit higher. But with my testing, with my experimentation, he's just a B tier, and there's nothing wrong with that. Hildryn. Muscle mommies are my favorite. Anyway, Hildryn is really good. I'm gonna pop her in A tier. She can bounce between A and B in my view, but I think that for intended content, this frame's just nuts. Obviously she's a full-on shield tank, and Pillage is really good. But the problem is she can't utilize persistence really, as a lot of frames who struggle with just raw tanking do, or that's raw shield or raw health tanking. She can't use persistence, which is really unfortunate. She can give herself a lot of armor in a couple ways. Pillage is really good. And oh my god, Aegis Storm with the augment, which it basically requires, which is a bit annoying, is really strong. Arcane Expertise, really good. Hildryn does a lot of damage. When she falls under more fire, she is kind of but getting Balefire, as much as I don't like this exalted weapon, getting it in EDA ETA feels completely acceptable and is a breath of fresh air for me. Pillage, getting that full strip feels absolutely delectable while flying around. Haven is good for keeping your teammates alive, but my teammates don't seem to appreciate that ever, so I just opt. Also, it can grief their shield gating setups, I think, so I just opt for the Roar. Although I think you get Hildren's Shield Gate if you're under Haven. I don't remember, but anyway, I don't run Haven too often because my teammates just generally don't need it or won't appreciate it anyway, so I give myself more damage instead. And Aegis Storm with Aegis Gale is just broken as shit. The CC's pretty nice, but it's mainly the alt fire you're looking for with Aegis Gale. This frame is good. This frame is very good. A tier feels appropriate. I could see a world where if you're talking about higher level content where her shields come under more scrutiny, under more fire, it could be a little bit rougher, but I think A tier for DE's intended content is a totally acceptable place to put her. Harrow, my most beautiful. I love this Warframe. I love this Warframe so much, man. Like, this is the fashion frame my channel icon is based out. Anyways, I love this frame to death. Like, the synergy, as you can see, I have 5 configs. I named it. This is the only, like, Warframe I get cutesy with in terms of naming his loadouts and shit. I love this frame. I love Harrow. You just get so much value. So, Condemn is incredibly good. On-command shields, on-command CC, works on Acolytes, I believe. Incredibly good. Works incredibly good in other frames, and helps Harrow land headshots if you are less mechanically inclined with a gun. Totally fine. Overshield capacity is doubled, and starting with maximum energy, really, really good. The starting maximum energy is really good for Thurible. Thurible is Harrow's weakest ability by far, and the main reason for that is because energy econ is a government psyop nowadays, and you just don't need it. Penance, incredibly fun. Really annoying that it doesn't tell you that he gets melee value from Penance as well. And the thing about that is, it means now I use the code of Sporothrix here because I believe it's one of his strongest synergies in the game with this setup here, which is a Arcane Avenger Combat Discipline Archon Intensify setup that I've talked about many a time. He's basically able to keep himself alive through Combat Discipline, proc Archon Intensify for more power strength, and then Avenger gives flat crit chance on top of his Covenant Retaliation's crit chance. This means that any weapon is a crit weapon with Harrow, especially if you aim for the head, which the Sporothrix is a sniper, so that's incentivized to do so. Otherwise, the Vinquibus is really fun with him because you get to get value out of the melee and the headshot part of it. It's so Vinquibus Harrow is like my favorite thing ever. Penance is a bunch of stats. Covenant is on command. I wish this was recastable, to be honest, but I do use Lasting Covenant. So as long as you get one good Covenant build where like you get the max headshot multiplier or crit chance multiplier, then like Lasting Covenant will usually do the trick. But I do kind of wish, part of me wishes that this ability was recastable. The fact that other frames get really easy on command invulnerability and Harrow has to wait out his retaliation time is a bit annoying, but this frame is so amazing. However, I do have to acknowledge he is not one of the best frames in the game. Thurible is kind of weak. He's a bit selfish. And I think A is a perfect place for him because he does make a lot of his synergies, which are again not very high level, are just bonkers strong. And this frame is so fun to play, so incentivizes, like one of the best gameplay loops ever. And we're about to get to another great gameplay loop in a second. But yeah, Harrow can also, I have some bias, I think Harrow could totally go B tier. But this frame just does the most. I love him so much. Easy to get shields back, easy to get health back, easy to get energy back, invulnerability, tons of damage for your whole team. Griefing your Latum teammates. How fun is that, right? Like, come on. So yeah, or Fenmore or Felarx or whatever teammates with the flat crit chance buff is hilarious to me. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but whatever. We'll move on. I love Harrow to death. Writing the God on him pretty soon, but not anytime like super soon. So yeah, let's move on. I love Gyre. I love Gyre a lot. I think she is one of the coolest aesthetics ever. I don't even have a prime yet, by the way. But her reliance on pillage, her desire for augments, put this frame in B tier. It really bothers me. I think, again, when I wrote that augment video, and then Cool Kid made a very similar video, Gyre needs help, in my opinion, in terms of making at least one of these augments base kit. You can still get a really strong build going because pillage and like corrosive projection as a combo with multi augmented, you're able to get the full strip still, which she really wants. But this I consider to be like pretty high investment. And with her high investment, you can get some good stuff going. A ton of electric procs, critting, all that good stuff. But yeah, Arc Sphere kind of stinks without the augment. It's like okay CC, I guess. If we're talking high level stuff, the critting is nice, obviously. What's it called? Arc coil. I don't even remember what our second ability is called. Coil horizon. That's what it is. The grouping on it is fine. It's like a bowling ball. Whatever. They should make a bowling minigame. That'd be more useful than that ability. I don't think it's very good. But pillage is insane, beyond insane on her. Cathode Grace on its own is fine, but has a cooldown, which is like, what are we doing? And you would want the cathode current every time. And then Rotoswell, the augment isn't super necessary compared to like Arc Sphere and Cathode Grace, but you get such a complete kit once you have Reverse Rotoswell in here with Pillage and the Shield Gating and Arcane Aegis. Like, this frame becomes that S tier outcome I mentioned once you hit high investment, but B tier feels very fair for her. Even with her prime out, I just don't think she's that good unless you're really hyper investing into Gyre. But when you do, she is incredibly good. So, and that's how all these S tier, B tier frames operate. So, please don't yell at me in the comments, please. I'm begging. Grendel. Really interesting frame. Definitely insanely hard to kill. But he has one key mechanic that solely puts him in B tier. He uses Nourish worse than every frame in the game, which is hilarious. Having Nourish and Roar is very good, though, I will say that. And Regurgitate plus Gastro, insanely fun nuking, insanely usable armor strip, really good. But his whole mechanic of eating enemies, the enemies just simply do not last long enough in his stomach. The fact that you can only carry like so much Regurgitate ammo essentially at the same time, having to feast over and over, even though it's got a good base range. If you enjoy Grendel's playstyle, you will have fun. The problem being is that his playstyle is just, it's micromanagey in like the least fun way possible. I don't enjoy playing this frame. There needs to be some sort of like actual like full mechanic, like full like nourished mechanic where like even if there's no bodies left, you're still able to use your abilities. Like the fact that my abilities are gated by having enemies in my stomach is just cringe. It's just not a fun way to play the game. Or like turbo buff his abilities, like make his nourish really strong, maybe give him more power strength based on how many enemies he has in his belly. I don't know, this frame needs help. He feels so not fluid to play at all, and he's fine, he works, he's fast as shit too, which is really fun, but I think B is where he's gonna call home, because I just don't enjoy playing this frame. It feels too fidgety. Enemies dying your stomach way too fast, casting your abilities gets rid of too much of them, and having to spit them out for Regurgitate, which is like one of his best like use cases for nuking with Gastro, it just feels awful to me. I could call it skill issue if you want, but I really do think this frame belongs in B tier. But you guys know who doesn't belong in B tier. It's Gauss, baby. And this frame is so stinking good. Like, I love this frame. I'm gonna equip my, yeah, look at this. I mean, come on, dude, really? Like, come on, look at this dude, man. So you can remove like, you can remove Mock Rush if you want, but it's insanely good. You can remove Connived Plating if you want, but it's incredibly good. You can remove Thermal Storm if you want, but it's incredibly good. This frame does every single thing, every single thing in the game. Gauss has the best design out of any frame in the game, including what Warframe wants from you. I believe Harrow and Gauss are tied in terms of like design, but I think that because Harrow just offers less innately, he's a little bit worse. But that's one thing or the other. Redline, the battery, insanely fun mechanic to use, insanely fun to micromanage. Opposite of Grendel, right? Mock Rush, incredibly fun to use. High skill ceiling, decent skill floor, like you have to kind of know what you're doing. Managing the battery is a lot of fun. Kinetic Plating keeps you alive. Status immunity means you can use AoE weapons, rockets and stuff without knocking yourself on your ass. But if you decide to use the Aegis setup with his passive with the battery, with the recharge delay and stuff, then you can take off Kinetic Plating and no worries. It's his playstyle difference. Thermal Sunder, if you don't want to worry about it too much, you just want to use Mock Rush to charge your battery, you can totally do that. Like, this frame can cast, weapons platform, speed run, everything. Redline gives a gazillion stats, and the stats scale with power duration instead of power strength, which leads to a unique modding experience that's so much fun. But you might still want to build a little bit of power strength, because like for this build, for example, I use Shock Trooper and Thermal Transfer. Ooh, it's so fun. You can get melee stats, you get range gun stats, you get everything. You get grouping, you get full armor stripping, you're fast as shit. I can't explain how fun and good this frame is. I couldn't use words in the English language to say how much I love Gauss. If every frame in the future was, Gauss should have a Gauss tier on this tier list, really, quite frankly. He does everything. He is proof that like a frame can be made to do everything and still be kind of satisfying. So yeah, Gauss is the GOAT. Probably one of the best frames, if not the best frame in the game overall. Especially with again, it's on the caveat. There is like, for that title, he would require some higher investment and higher skill, but he's still like incredibly good at a baseline. Garuda. This frame. Well, let's talk first. Let's discuss first, right? This frame requires an immense amount of activity and, in my opinion, skill. You get a lot of damage. You get basically, if Blood Altar was better, this would be a more uncontested tier, but we'll talk about the tier in a second for Garuda. Dread Mirror, insane, but requires, you know, some good activity to keep you alive. Bloodlighting, along with high energy, means you can use things like Overcharge on your primary, like we talked about with Avara. Seeking Talons. Long cast animation is a bit annoying, but is, you know, can be recast and worked around. Not a big deal. Guaranteed melee if you decided to opt with that. No melee weapon. Her claws are fine. So infinite energy, infinite health, infinite damage, by the way, with Dread Mirror. If you are skilled at Garuda, and in my opinion, all you need to learn about Garuda can be learned in like a 20-minute YouTube video. I am going to do the personal bias thing and place Garuda in S tier. However, this frame requires much more skill than the majority of this top S tier roster. Keep that in mind. I don't think it's like Limbo levels of knowledge required, but understanding the mechanics of piloting Garuda, it's a very active playstyle, and you need to be pretty good at the game to make Garuda work as well as Gauss, for example. But S tier feels appropriate for Garuda. This frame can do everything. It's just that it does require some knowledge and mechanical skill and a very active playstyle that Warframe players aren't always game for, right? But the frame does belong in S tier, in my opinion. It's become clear to me with a lot of testing that this frame is just incredibly bonkers and good, even without, you know, the insane Garuda one-trick skill that a lot of them show. Gara, as you guys know, belongs in S tier. Yeah, this is like my Night Gara. I think she looks absolutely amazing. This frame is really good. She's in my top 10 list, obviously. Shattered Lash nukes entire maps with 0 LOS for some reason. Insane scaling. We don't know why. The radial blind's pretty okay. It's whatever. Splinter Storm, insanely high DR. Basically a kill aura that can instantly kill anything and scales infinitely. Absolutely bonkers. Free Helmet slot because Spectre's Rage kind of sucks, admittedly, but whatever. Free Helmet slot, we take it. We kind of would like it on this Warframe anyway. And then Mass Vitrify, absolutely bonkers nuke at low levels, steals defenses, makes enemies sit still for you, which is like similar to like an Avalanche, the way it might do that. Gara is just stupid. Nuking at high levels, nuking at low levels, being unkillable, making your teammates unkillable. Splinter Storm can be used on teammates, enemies, objectives. Like, this frame just does everything. Gara is so good. Many could make the case for her being a bit boring. I would agree. The only bad thing about this frame is, besides Spectre of Siphon slash Rage, is the horizontal linearity, whatever. The linear nature of our horizontal Shattered Lash can be a little bit annoying for some players to get the hang of once you get used to it. It's not like Korra, where Korra, her stuff like auto-lacks on. Forgot to give her the right pairs on, my bad. Isn't this fashion frame so nice? God damn. Anyway, like Korra's one auto locks onto Strangledome. Gara, it's a bit annoying to do because Mass Vitrify doesn't really scale with like Shadow Lash's damage all the way. But regardless, this frame is S tier, turbo broken. Love this frame to death, and let's move on. Frost is the most. Let's just give the rating now. Frost is the one I want to give S tier to most out of all the A tiers, even more than Harrow, because this frame is just so good. The problem is augments. Ice Wave sucks, free Helmet slot, so we take it. You know, that's the same as Gara, right? Not a big deal. Freeze also sucks, but we need an augment. Also, Freeze Force is not nearly as good as the damage dealing ones like Shock Trooper, Fireball Frenzy, stuff like that. But it's still like, freezing enemies is good because that is crit damage ultimately. But, you know, it's alright. Snow Globe. It's good. It does a lot. It does what it says on the tin, right? Very valuable. Problem being, you don't need it in a lot of content. There's just better ways to defend things. Killing all the enemies is usually how it, you know, comes out to be anyway. Avalanche is probably, with Truculence and with Icy Avalanche, with Freeze Force, and with Biting Frost, or with Biting Frost, Freeze Force, or with Biting Frost, Icy Avalanche, and Truculence, and like a decent range build. Avalanche is one of the single most valuable button presses in your entire kit. It is ridiculous. Especially with some good range. This is like mediocre range because I want to invest more in strength for like Breach Surge, like Nourish. Like these builds are all pretty similar. I would say with this Breeze Surge build, I'd probably pivot into some range here to change the build up. Obviously, like I want a full strip on Avalanche and stuff, so there's a lot of like different builds I could have gone here for sure. But adaptation like doesn't work with overguards. There's like some building changes. I'm like, this is really cool. I say Avalanche scales with your armor. You gain more armor from your passive. Frost is a very complete kit, but like the problem is it's not evenly distributed. Avalanche just is like 3 abilities in one. It's so strong. His augments are bonkers, and you can get a lot of value out of this frame. But I just don't think he's very much like a little bit. He's very the 30% rule does not like Frost. A lot of his value does just come from Avalanche. So yeah, we'll put him in A tier. I think that's where he belongs. He looks great. But A tier is where I regrettably am going to put him. S tier, my heart tells him S tier, but my brain does say A tier, unfortunately. Excalibur kind of suffers from survivability. Everyone says that, and everyone is basically correct. This frame is like pretty okay. Like his damage is actually quite ridiculous, but he's really a glass cannon, which you wouldn't expect from a frame, especially like a melee frame, right? Like that's kind of crazy. Slash dash is his main kind of avenue to living, right? Invulnerability, mobility, lets you buy time if you get a negative status effect, and allows you to shield gate properly. In this case, I use Wrathful Advance, but of course, Radial Blind with the finisher multipliers, the self finishers, because when they're blinded, they still take the multiplier damage. Very good, I would say. Radial Javelin is booty ass, but with Furious Javelin, you're able to get a huge melee multiplier, which you really want as Excalibur. His passive gives you access to more damage in a variety of ways, which is okay, and this is the Umbra Sentience thing, but I don't really interact with that much. And then Exalted Blade, provided with Chromatic Blade, can do a lot. Another reason you might not want to take off, or you might want to take off, Radial Blind, is because Exalted Blade has a Radial Blind built into it. It's a little bit tiny, but it still allows you to kill enemies within a decent 5-meter radius, which isn't bad when you're already engaging in melee distance, right? So yeah, this frame, unfortunately, is operating in a very competitive niche of, like, melee users, right? Like melee exalted users, melee users in general. He's, you know, in a way he's competing with frames like VALKYR, Baruch, KULLERVO, stuff like that, and to an extent Gara and Korra, right? So he goes in B tier, unfortunately. Is he great? Yes, but does he require a lot higher investment to function at a higher level more than other frames? I would say also yes. His survivability issue is real, and I hope that he gets some sort of something to help with his survivability when compared to things like VALKYR, who literally can't die and get like thousands of armor, or Baruch, who can't die and gets thousands of DR, or a lot of DR, right? Not thousands, you know what I'm saying. His competition just does his job a little bit better, but Blast Influence Excalibur is no joke. Same with Wukong. And before you guys beef with me, I'm shooting Equinox right to B tier. This frame is incomplete. It's a frame that is advertised as having 7 abilities, but really just has 2. MAME is really good. This is why you use the frame. Obviously, if you are a high-level Equinox player, you can get a lot of usage out of everything, right? But this frame just kind of lies to you on the package. You know, if Energy Transfer was base kit, and you could use the passive of Mend and the active of MAME, that would be really strong. Unfortunately, you can't. So you just, like, without Energy Transfer, you can't. And so you max build range, and then, like, MAME has no strength scaling, so you end up with, like, kind of a Frankenstein's monster of a building experience, and it's just not a lot of fun. I went over Equinox in my top 5 reworks video, which you can go watch, and you'll understand. This frame can achieve S tier outcomes. She can. It's just a lot of work, and it's nowhere near as easy as it is for the A and S category. It's just not the case at all. So I understand Equinox players get defensive. I love Equinox, play a lot of her. But this frame is just false advertising straight up. That's my opinion, and it's my tier list. So Equinox is going in the B tier. I hope she gets some modernization because her concept is really strong, similar to Limbo. Ember's getting the same treatment because, oh, sorry, this is a lot of I had going to, because I was getting my hot takes thumbnail. Whoops. Ember's really good at not a lot. She can deal like pretty insane damage. She's going to B tier, by the way. She can do things, right? So Fire Blast allows you to full strip, gives you Overguard with the augment, pretty okay. Immolation can give you a bunch of DR on top of adaptation, makes you really tanky. Inferno sucks, unfortunately. Even with hyper investment, you don't get that much out of it. Inferno needs to be reworked desperately. Immolation should be looked at because the fact that you can't really optimally use Fire Blast is just really annoying. Balancing her Immolation is not fun. Fireball is a fine ability, and Fireball Frenzy is a great augment. I think that her immolation needs to be looked at, and I think Inferno desperately needs to be looked at. So after seeing Uriel's ult, I'm like, oh, this is what they could have given Ember. Like, that's kind of sad. So hopefully Ember is up next for some love somewhere. Her passive is deceptively, like, it's really strong. Like, you can get up to like 160% ability strength, I think, on this. I think the highest I've gotten is about 160. That's a lot of ability strength, right? Which means if you do run the Roars, the Nourishes, the Zadas, stuff like that, you can get insane outcomes out of this frame. The problem is it's not the frame doing it. It's the subsume. Same with Omamori and Eclipse, right? You stack DR. Okay, now you're immortal. There you go. This frame doesn't hold up on her own 2 legs. Like, you could even make the case that Loki stands up on his 2 legs better than Ember does. Her mechanics just don't work the way I think they were intended to be used. Does she work? Does she work? Yeah, especially with a helmet and a good weapon, you can do a whole lot. She's a good weapons platform. But this frame does not work as a cohesive experience, so she finds herself in the B tier for sure. But great assets, though. Dante, if you guys aren't aware, is my current, and like obviously if I revisit it a little bit, but he is my current best Warframe in the game. This frame is really good. I'll cycle through my fashion frames here for you. This is like my Doctor Strange kind of fit going on here, but yeah, Dante is making his way into the S tier, and I do believe he is the best frame in the game at the moment. Obviously, like, what does that mean? Kind of nothing compared to the other S tiers. The frames are so good, but he just has a gazillion, like, he can get 3 buffs really accessibly, really easily, that are all very meaningful. Triumph can not Triumph, what is it? Tragedy can, like, one-shot almost anything you want it to. Light versus Overguard keeps his entire team basically immortal. Dark Verse helps clear out rooms, like, at a decent level. It's fine, but you mainly use it to create the parts of Final Verse. And then you still get Noctua. First of all, you can get Noctua in, like, EDA, ETA, and Noctua is a very serviceable weapon. Additionally, you could take it off and still get the Word Warden modded version, which is broken as shit with Impetus, so you get full Impetus stacks. And you can put Roar here, you get a bunch of power strength, and you deal a ton of status damage, ton of status chance. Like, you get codex entries for free. Like, this frame is just so disgustingly good. If you want to hear more about Dante, I suggest you watch my top 10 video. But yeah, this frame is bonkers good, and you'll really enjoy playing him. I think it's a lot of fun, especially with the button presses, especially with a little bit of mastery over his combos. You'll have a great time. I promise. He's not, he seems difficult because he has technically 7 abilities, but I promise he's not difficult at all. Dagoth, despite, I would say this is probably the only frame where I feel like I really wasn't able to study enough with her. Put her in A tier, and my reasonings for that is I think this frame, first of all, the buffs you get from this frame are very strong. Grave Spirit, the Amethyst Factual Spirit, the Augment, which unfortunately feels kind of required here, because cooldowns in Warframe, while being one of the coolest things, like with Brimstone from Uriel, somewhat like Battery from Gauss, stuff like Set of 9 Evade, like cooldowns have a place in Warframe, and they can absolutely operate, but this one basically requiring the Augment, same with, Omakuji from Kome, like, it's stuck in the Augment, it's super frustrating. Doom as a concept is very, very cool. The problem is executing in Warframe, where enemies are instantly executed, right, is kind of a problem. Also, the way Doom's math works sometimes, which with its damage redirection, isn't great. I've seen it do. It's also hard to tell when it's actually helping you. Apparently, it can also, like, steal kills from your galvanized mods or from companion mods. I think it's like not gonna take Momentous Bond. I think it steals from, but like that's whatever. Usually, it's not a big deal because you're killing in one shot anyway. I've seen Doom do things. Phantom Wrath is the name of the actual proc. I've seen Phantom Wrath do things. But I will say it's only on those big units, and it's nice when it does it, to be honest. But when this is like a huge part of the kit's power allowance, I think it should be a lot more obvious what it's doing, and maybe a little bit more useful, right? But that's like not really Dagoth's fault. That's more Warframe's power creep going out of control, which like is neither here nor there. Weird Sights is fine. I think if you're doing a ranged setup, it's a lot weaker. But unironically, Weird Sights gets quite strong if you're using a melee setup. Slow's great. The viral priming if your melee is great. Otherwise, I do think it's kind of ass. But it's also nice to have a quick, snappy ability. And Weird Sights is exactly like that. I used to set up with Arcane Concentration on Dagoth for my Grave Spirit, and that had pretty positive outcomes casting Weird Sights into the Grave Spirit. The Cavalry. Unfortunately, this ability's targeting bothers me. It's very precise. You know how you're playing like a fighting game sometimes, or really any game, and you're like, oh bullshit, that hit me? Yeah, enemies are never going to say that. This thing has a precise hitbox. It's way too small. The way it moves in terrain is annoying. And the fact that you have to doom the enemies first in order to proc Phantom Wrath, in order to strip their defense, is a silly prerequisite. I don't understand it. Her passive's quite good. I like her passive a lot. And Grave Spirit, even without the Augment, is pretty neat. But I will say the cooldown, again, is done poorly unless you have the Augment. So I think the Goth has things she can do, and the damage she gets, especially if you go like an optimal, I'd say Wrathful Advance build, Wrathful Advance over Doom, Grave Spirit Augment, like you can get some, because like the critical damage you get here is crazy. The critical chance from other modifiers, whether it's like Avenger, whether it's Wrathful Advance, or whatever that might be, critical damage is a little bit rarer in the game from my experience, and so combining that with any kind of critical chance stacking, the Goth can definitely push out insane numbers, and she is, if you're using Grave Spirit properly, effectively unkillable. So overall a solid frame, but I think uninteresting given what she's supposed to be doing. Like I think Mirage is uninteresting through and through. Like, okay, do a bunch of damage, be really hard to kill. Okay, you got me. The Goth has this cool Doom stuff, the Cavalry, being a ghost, moving between life and death, yet ultimately she feels like she plays like a weaker Mirage with like a lot cooler of an aesthetic. Personal opinion, I'll put her in A tier, even though I think you could make a case for B, but overall with my limited experience playing with her, I would say A tier. Site09, another one of my favorite frames, and it's not even close. This whole kit was designed with so much intention. Seek is semi-stationary, but if you build decent range, it's really not. You just need to position intelligently, get a ton of damage stacking during your missions. Resupply is an incredibly innovative ability. You get to use it for a lot of different things, whether that's the Sobek, lightning synergy, or you're using it with gas and neutralizer. Instantly reloading your weapons, making sure ammo is never a problem. Really, really strong. Evade is indefinite invisibility as long as you're playing sight as intended, which is really fun. And then neutralizer is an incredible sniper rifle, really fun exalted weapon to use, especially with resupplies gas. And even if you're just using, in this case, a weapons platform setup with a weapon that isn't neutralizer, you just get the Nourish slot or Zada's or whatever. I don't think you can actually put Zada's there. No, you can't put Zada's there. So Nourish, I have a Webbed Embrace build as well that I have to experiment with yet. So yeah, this frame is really fun. Now granted, if your playstyle isn't really with, he's S tier by the way, if your playstyle isn't really favored for sight, then you'll notice he's significantly less fun. But even if you run the Sobek or Zar with him, that means he's kind of a frame for everyone. But to play him at the highest level, I think is a precision gameplay style, and that's a lot of fun. SARYN is S tier. One of the best supports in the game, not even close. Prismatic Gem is stupid. The augment makes it stupider. I mean, what else could you possibly want? The DR she gets is incredible, giving it to her whole team with little to no effort. Her one's actually a pretty good ability, the shards, but for me, I just prefer Breach Surge. I think it matches her aesthetic really well, and it's a really useful piece of support utility. Recrystallize and Crystallize are pretty good. I think I could definitely put Breach Surge here and opt for that if I wanted to. But I actually really like Crystallize. I like the minigame. But I would say most stream players end up removing her for in most cases. So yeah, this stream build I've played extensively and really only use it. I hesitate to fully invest into non-prime Warframes, just because I'm still kind of a brokey. But yeah, this frame will, the grind for her is agony, and would make me want to place her in like an F tier. I hated the grind for SARYN. But the frame itself is one of the best supports in the game. Makes everything immortal, does so much damage, helps with statuses, helps with impetus. Like, there is so much this frame does. Red crits guaranteed, which everyone likes. Kind of wish it scaled with strength a little bit, but it doesn't. And yeah, Crystallize is good, but most people will end up removing it. This frame just so fun, so pretty. I love SARYN. Well, do I play her a ton? No, but I tested her pretty extensively because, I have a support Warframe video that I'm kind of trying to release like fairly soon, and SARYN just stacks up really, really nicely. Love that frame to death. Chroma, who I have an entire rework video on, is not very good. Is not very good. He's basically two abilities, and sometimes Elemental Ward doesn't even favor the build you're using. Now granted, always like having bonus health and having bonus shields is always pretty good, and like now with Arcane Expertise, you can do like a pillage setup that's really good. Nourish is still really good on him. He can do a lot, but he does like damage plus tankiness. Okay, how many other frames in the game do damage plus tankiness? Effigy is good for 0.10% of content, 0.1% of content, like whatever. And Spectral Scream is never good, so we always replace that. Yeah, I wrote a whole rework on him. I think this frame kind of stinks, both conceptually and to execute, although if you just like big numbers and you like being really tanky, he definitely executes that. It's just the way he does it is way sloppier, into less quality, into like a less cohesive experience than other Warframes on this list, unfortunately. He does look cool as shit, though. Caliban is really, really, really good. Really, really hard to kill. His companions are quite solid. I will say that I would call him quite augment reliant. Like, I think without Razor Mortar, Caliban does land in B tier for me. But once you have Razor Mortar equipped, I think he's actually really strong. I use the full mecha set with a Paris Prime stat stick, and his shields are insane. With Aegis, he's really strong. Kamisado really strong. This build, I believe, is like one of the best I could equip here. Yeah, with his full setup, he's really strong. He could definitely sit between A and B, but I think he's just really easy to play. He's really fun. The campaigns are really good. His shields basically can never go down in most content. Sentient Wrath is a decent enough damage vulnerability. Tau status effect is quite solid if you're building towards it, and it's not a hard thing to build towards. So Caliban makes it pretty soundly to A. I think he's a good frame, a good summoner frame. Looks really great, plays pretty cohesively. I wish Fusion Strike was a little different because I don't like that it's a frontal cast. And I wish that, you know, it was easier to see what Fusion Strike was doing in terms of its defense strip. It's definitely a good ability. I just think Nourish is better, especially for purposes of what's called Razor Mortar and Razor Gyre's like kind of grouping into the Ortholist like absolute one-shot combo. So yeah, I would say Caliban is A tier, but if you wanted to make the case for B tier, I think you absolutely could. I think higher investment, he can do a lot, even a lot more than that, to maybe like S tier. But I think A tier, and then for that reason, I think A tier is a totally reasonable place to pop him down. Baruch also finds himself in A tier. So the reason that Baruch, I think he could be made a contestant for S tier, but first of all, he requires enemy density in the kind of same way that QORVEX would like it. Also, his restraint is just a problem for him, because for VALKYR, you get similar, really strong damage, really strong survivability right out the gate, right? Baruch's restraint, while being an amazing mechanic, just like I think Gauss's battery and URIEL's brimstone mechanic are, and immolation if it was done well, right? Baruch's restraint just handicaps him, and you can't spam lull unless you're using like a negative duration build. And he's just got some handicaps, some, you know, he's not power corrupt per se because his damage is still ridiculous and his survivability is still ridiculous. But I will say that, and he does kind of need reactive storm a bit, which is like whatever. This frame is really strong, but he just punches the shit out of things. Really does a really good job. But he is gated a bit behind like his restraint function, which means he can't run, or has a harder time running duration-based mods like Nourish, like Roar, or like Wrathful Advance, like VALKYR can do with zero problems. So for that reason, he ends up in A tier, not S tier, even though I think he's really strong. But on top of the enemy density issue he also has, even if lull wasn't problematic in terms of eroding restraint. Banshee needs help. Banshee needs help. This is one of the only frames where I consider, first of all, B tier for Banshee, fitting. This is one of the only frames where I consider a helmet option to not be like heavily advised, but literally necessary. I don't know that this frame is playable at Steel Path level, especially higher Steel Path, depending on the objective, with her base kit. I literally think she needs a helmet. I've used Evade, Pillage, Gloom, and Resonator to all varying levels of like pretty good success and pretty good outcomes. But the fact that she has like weak point anti-synergies with Sonar, the fact that Silence feels like it was coded in like the 1990s, and the way it works that you have to enter and re-enter the Silence radius to be debuffed is just absurd. And then Sonic Boom would be good with Sonic Fracture, but the enemies get, you know, fly halfway across the country, and you can no longer like do precision work or even kill with like certain weapons because it sends them flying. And weapon noises being hushed is like pretty good. This frame can achieve outcome. Like she can do pretty good. I mean, I play a lot of Banshee because I find her playstyle really enjoyable, but this frame needs reworking badly. I talk about it more in my video of top 5 reworks, but for me, this frame is one of the only frames that is like, you really can't play base kit. You really need the helmet system to fix. But she looks great, and most of her kit like plays fine, especially with the Resonator build, because I think Resonator fits her frame really well. She's a sound frame, so the Resonator makes sense. But in my view, this frame needs help, probably more than I would say like 95% of the roster. But with that, it's like a fun stall to build and like a compressive primer, and like there's a lot to do here. It's just like, she needs help. Everything that's cool to do with her, like only like 40% of it has to do with Banshee herself. The rest is like, oh, she looks pretty and can, you know, look at the skin for the Stalta looks all. Anyway, yeah, this frame needs help. Please, God, if you want to hear more about my opinion on Banshee, you can watch the rework video. But B tier is fitting. Speaking of B tier being fitting, Atlas does one thing real well, and that is punch. The problem: Tectonics is a joke of an ability. Petrify is fine, but it's a frontal cast. With it, like, okay range, right? 120 degrees is not bad. Could be better. Rumblers are dumb as rocks. They are rocks. But Atlas is an interesting case study, in my view. Because he Every ability sucks besides Landslide, and his passive is debatably good. And like turning into a Rumbler with augments, like whatever. Is like okay, CC is cringe. So like okay, we can get insanely strong outcomes with Atlas, but you have to. He's the case study of like this frame sucks from like a conceptual perspective. He barely has a complete functioning kit in the game of Warframe, but he's pretty fucking tanky. He can shield get with Landslide, and his Landslide is a ton of damage in a decent range. So therefore we can say he's good because he can create good outcomes. Like, no, I don't believe that's the case. And honestly, I kind of wish I did this tier list in alphabetical order because this point is really important to make. Atlas being able to do crazy shit with Landslide doesn't mean he's a good frame. Like, can he create good outcomes? Yes, but the design stinks. It sucks. So yeah, Atlas goes in B tier. He's fun as shit to play, besides the carpal tunnel part. But he kind of encompasses that 30% rule I applied. Like, just because he can create good outcomes doesn't mean the frame is good. And so when I make my tier list, he has to go in B tier. That's just how that works. And last but not least, the Space Ninja Supreme Ash. This frame is really, really good at dealing damage. Like, really, like, in terms of raw output, this frame does good damage, but he's going to B tier. Let me explain. I think you could make a case for A tier for Ash. He does a ton of damage, even without Bladestorm Wrathful Advance, which is a great combo that deals a stupid amount of damage, quite frankly. But if you get him on a good Roar, Zatas, or Nourish setup, thermal transfer even, he can do stupid damage. Like stupid damage. The problem is, like, a lot of frames can do that. Sometimes damage isn't even the objective. Like, there's single target damage especially. Like, he can't AoE that effectively, in his kit. There's a couple things I would do to change Ash. And maybe I'm going to write a rework at some point. I don't always want to give my ideas out, which sounds like a little selfish, but like, whatever. I have ideas. I write reworks. I feel like it's acceptable to not give them all at once. But that's kind of all the Space Ninja Assassin Supreme does, is a fuck ton of damage, like a comedic amount of damage. You get a good Roar build, you get Smoke Shadow in there, you can deal so much. The passive is pretty good, although it's worse considering where Slash is at. Teleport's fun. I'd say Melee Ash is probably the best way to play him, but Gun Platform Ash just does an incredible job. The problem is his kit does not feel very complete. Shuriken's an absolute joke. Teleport, while being fun, and can work with the melee setup especially because you want to kill high priority targets. Like, if Teleport should have as the finisher bonus, but then bonus damage, or maybe like negates Overguard, like that would be really cool. So you can assassinate like priority targets. I think it'd be really sick. Ash doesn't need a rework in the same way that like someone like Banshee or Ember might, but he definitely is a bit one-dimensional. But his one dimension is also how his kit is advertised, so I don't know. Make Bladestorm faster, I guess, would be the only thing I could say. It's just, you do a ton of damage, but you do it as slow as a snail, and that's kind of a bummer. This frame's good, and I enjoy playing Ash a lot. One of my first mains, it's who I beat the second dream with. It's who I killed Stalker with old Bladestorm, where it was like instantaneous. God, that was funny. And like disorienting experience. But yeah, this frame could use some help at some point after the actual critical condition frames get help. And yeah, that concludes our yearly tier list. This is my first time recording for this long, so my voice is really strained. It got strained like halfway through the video, probably. It's my longest video. This will be a yearly kind of junction. Wanted to, so hopefully this didn't tell anyone too bad. You can be like hateful and mean to me in the comments, just don't be a dickhead to your fellow commenters, please. I know the risks of making a YouTube channel and talking about opinions, right? I get it. I know the risk of making tier lists. I know why people click on these things. I get it. Yeah, it's a couple things. So first of all, thank you guys for the support. I've been on YouTube about 9 months now, and I am just beyond grateful. I never thought I'd get this far. I remember one of my more popular videos starts off with me thanking you guys for 400 subscribers. Insane, the growth. I mean, I am just blessed beyond belief for the opportunity to make YouTube videos for my favorite game for you guys. You guys deserve it. This is your channel. Always comment what you want. I can try my very best to meet your demands. A couple notes. Firstly, if you guys know any Warframe artists who can draw in Warframe style, Warframes are a bit unique, complicated to draw. Please, I put it out in one of my, I think my focus school video. I'm currently trying to make a channel header for my channel. And I've commissioned one artist and I got really good work, and I want to get first of all, I want to support a bunch of small artists. So if you can get that going, that'd be great. Otherwise I will just use the same artist like 3 or 4 times, but I would like to support different small artists, get different art styles for Warframe, because I like the aesthetic a lot. So if you know anyone, or if you are one yourself, please hit me up. either in the comments, or I'm probably gonna, after this video, get like a Gmail hooked up for just my channel. And that's about it. Cheers to more videos. Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep as consistent with the Fridays as I have been. Just know that I love you guys deeply, even my more problematic commenters. You know who you are. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to make my dream of having a YouTube channel and making videos for people, come true. Because ultimately, that's something I've wanted to do since I was a kid, and doing it has been so much more fun than I could ever have conceptualized at the start. So thank you. I love you guys. I am blessed, and I will not disappoint with further content. Let's move forward. Happy New Year and all that good stuff. Hopefully you guys had a good holidays. I know it can be a lonely time for some folks. Just know you are never alone. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.